I call this meeting to order. If you would, follow along with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation from Eric Schmidt. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we thank Thee for this wonderful day that we have been blessed with. Father, we are so grateful to Thee that we may come together in the Ozarks and that we might be blessed with the ability to make decisions that are for the benefit of this community and this region. Father, we were extremely blessed to hear earlier today my Ozark Mountain home that really spoke about not only the beautiful scenery, but the wonderful psychology of the residents and the harmony that it brings. We ask Thee now for the blessing of that harmony throughout this meeting, that our elected officials may be blessed with Thy spirit of discernment, and that they may truly make the best decisions for this area. We ask Thee to please bless the employees and the residents and our visitors, and we say these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Benton.
Here.
Denham.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
LeBlanc.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to start tonight with our special recognition. Our recipient is not here this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I've been asked to receive the award on Tracy's behalf.
Would you want to come down here?
Sure.
We'll get a picture.
No, but I will say a few words. No more jokes.
Oh, good.
Okay, Tracy. On behalf of the Mayor, Board of Aldermen, City Administrator, and City staff, it is my honor to announce Tracy Gideon as this month's You've Been Caught Doing Something Good Award. This award is to positively recognize Branson citizens and community members who make our community a great place to live, work, and play. Tracy is receiving this award due to her tireless dedication and service to our community in the Ozark Mountain Christmas Committee. Not only was she a big part in getting the committee started, but she was named chairman of this committee and has led the efforts in helping our community remember that Christmas is one of our most important seasons. She's a great example of a community member who cares deeply about Branson and who has taken the initiative to make it the best it can be. Congratulations, and keep making Branson proud.
And I'll just say quickly, I was the one who nominated Tracy. There are a few people along the way as you get involved in public service that when they're thrown and thrust into a leadership position, they take to it and just thrive. I would think our county clerk, Stephanie Spencer, is another one like that. And Tracy, from the very moment that we asked her to lead the Ozark Mountain Christmas Committee, has been that she had a prior engagement and she really wanted to be here, but we let her know that these will be recorded and that she'll always keep her recognition. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet. Tracy's been here a long time and has done a lot of good for our community. So this is the public comment section of the Board of Aldermen meeting. Before we start public comment section, I'd like to share a few words. At our last meeting, there was a brief discussion about possibly moving the public comment section to the end of the meeting. And over the last 2 weeks, my phone has rang off the hook. We have many community members who strongly believe public comment section should remain at the beginning of the meeting because that's what this city is all about, is listening to the public. I couldn't agree more. However, we need to make some changes to our public comment section. I have been told that possibly because of my openness and willingness and encouragement of listening to all that want to speak, that there may be a few that have taken advantage of my openness and willingness. Many have said that this is a public meeting and they want our comments to be what they're intended for, and that is to address things on, is that me? To address things on this board that have to do with, there you go. Thank you. But let's address and discuss the things that this board has some authority, some control, things that influence our community. So, beginning tonight, what we do not want to hear is we do not want to hear things about COVID. We don't want to hear things about getting jabbed with a shot. We don't want to hear about killing babies. We don't want to hear about 5G. We don't want to hear that this board has the authority to go to Cox Hospital and tell them that they can't do what they're doing. This board has no authority over Cox Hospital, Taney County Health, Taney County, state of Missouri, or the federal government. So, I would like us to return back, not me, I'm hearing from the community, so I'm listening to their voice, and their voice is saying, let's limit our public comments to things that are business-related, city-related, and that this board has some control over. So, with that being said, at this time, the board will hear citizens who have signed up in order they were listed. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Your Honor, the first speaker is Ricky Zates, 3000 Green Mountain, Branson, speaking on local laws.
The health and well-being of this community is a priority. We have information about things that are occurring which are detrimental to the citizens. We are aware of things that are going on. As a matter of fact, Deanne is not here because she's having some problems. Okay, so you know who she is, right? If we have no population, there will be no one here to correspond to, so to speak. Saturday, we have the Walk for Life. If you're pro-life, and I am, I would encourage you to be there. My only goal is to be an information source. I provide information. People can make whatever decisions they want to make. I make the information readily available to the public on our website, nomorejab.wordpress.com. So people can be informed that this is experimental medicine that is not covered by insurance, that is detrimental to the population.
Excuse me, Richie. Tell us what this board can do about.
In my case, I'm only here for one purpose.
Okay.
Okay? I'm not here to argue with the board about what you can or cannot do, okay? So that's not on my agenda. I'm only here as an information resource, and that's it. Just like I'm telling you, I'm an information resource to inform you that if you want to be for the Walk for Life, you can go out and support that in your community. You can also support us in our investigation of things which we consider detrimental to the citizens. That's all I'm here for. That's what our site is for. That's why we're here. There's no other purpose. I have no other purpose for being here. So if we offer that resource for people to look into to see if what we're saying is true. And if it is, it should be a major concern here in this city as everywhere else in the country right now. That's my, whatever takes place on a legal platform or platforms, I won't mention. I'm not going to mention any of that. There are things going on in trillion-dollar lawsuits right now in this country, but that's not my modus operandi. I only want people to know about information that we can supply them with if they feel they need it, and there are remedies and things that can alter some of the characteristics that are occurring in their bodies. That's it.
Okay, and I think you've done that, and I appreciate
I've done it
it.
tonight, and I appreciate you guys,
Thank you, Richie.
and I support you, by the way, and I support these fine people that are working here, okay?
Thank
Just
you,
want to let
Richie.
you know that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Our next speaker is Alex McCauley, 200 Box Elder Lane, Forsyth, speaking on We the People.
We the people. The fact is, we the people are the leaders in the United States. And our public servants have been waiting on us to do our part in our communities to make the rules that we are governed by so that they can protect us. The fact is, we have been falling short. Mayor Milton has been trying not to make himself a king. We have been petitioning him to become a king. The fact is, until we start taking people into the court system and dragging out the evidence in a legal setting, the chief executive on any level cannot act on specific things that they need, that we need them to act on. If you can afford it, go ahead and take your grievances to the court system. It's in Forsyth. I appreciate the fact that Larry has not been wanting to become a tyrant over our community, and that's what makes him the most electable candidate this season. And we, the people, need to step up and do our duty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Madam Clerk?
Your Honor, our next speaker is Amber Thompson, 113 North Sunshine, speaking on landmark safety issues requiring attention.
Hi. I have this paperwork she's going to pass out, hopefully. Thank you, City Clerk. And it basically is my own HIPAA release, okay, so no one's liable here. But it shows on the second page how I was diagnosed with leishmaniasis of parasites, cerebral parasites. I do have proof of that on the paperwork because I have been, and I know you say we're separate from the hospital, but this is still a community work together. And we have to stay alive, as we said, pro-life, and we need to protect the lives of each other. And I do believe I contacted that freshwater parasite at Moonshine Beach, right outside of the perimeter that was marked off right there beside it. And I was worried that day about parasites for some strange reason. And I thought, we don't have brain-eating amoeba here. There are like several strains of that leishmania. Obviously, it's not the one that's as active, okay. But I'm gonna move on from that because three things I wanna mention about safety landmark issues. There is before I die. If I die today or tomorrow, we never know how long I'm gonna live. But first thing is, because it bothers me, when I go and take a hike through Forest Lake Park, there is a area that's, you know, if you come down through it, all the way down this Owen stairs, you'll see at the bottom there's a waterfall. But if you come in the other direction, it's very scary because there's so many tourists here that are not aware of the area, and that big cliff drop-off could really be fatal to somebody. I could just imagine someone having their little kid, and maybe they've got another little kid they're hanging on to, and the little kid goes running off the cliff, okay? And it is a serious issue. Could they sue the city? I know it gets back to what you kept trying to redirect people to, the economy, but there are three parts of this community: public safety, which Karen Best mentioned, public safety, infrastructure, and economy. I like all three candidates equally and the same running for office, by the way, because I have issues with a lot of things, okay? Where you try to checks and balances. Back to again, so public safety, that's a real public safety issue. If a school brought their whole schoolhouse down here and they went running in the park and, you know, a couple of them got excited because they live in the city and they ran off the cliff. I mean, that's horrifying. I think we should put something up there, because I do a lot of hiking, or I wouldn't even mention it, but I know a lot of, you know, I've seen a lot of places, and I think that would just be really awesome because this is so family-oriented. Second, a landmark issue, one I kind of already mentioned was the freshwater amoebas. That is a global warming issue, but I want to skip back to that in a second. Third, or whichever second I was going to mention, is the Coldwater Lake, the Taneycoma Lake, another safety issue that could be lethal to a citizen, just as the other two, would be if they fall into the water because you get instant hypothermia. And I know there's water sports on there, they rent kayaks, but they need to be informed that if they fall into that water, they would drown. And it's really almost a miracle. Like, I'm pretty much, they keep saying a miracle. I've talked to a state epidemiologist, Ashley Wigington. She swears I have Nigel Fowlery. She almost yelled at me about it. She's the nicest lady. But there comes a point, there's a psychopathic personality that's controlling our government right now. They seem so extremely nice. They talk really soft. They don't ever show any anger. I know, Larry, you said when you ran, you don't want anybody in here who's going to throw a fit, who's going to throw a chair, who's going to have a torment about anything. But, and you could have been anybody that said that. I got upset in this recorded conversation with Kathy Stepp, your city administrator. I literally have been called, and this has become it before, many times illegally by the health, excuse me, not the health department, but the police here. Psych eval mentions, okay, that they've talked to me less than I've talked today to you. Because everybody knows you don't talk to police. You leave them alone. You don't call them because they're dangerous. And if I was a mayor, if it had been Lisa Westfall, the city administrator, I reacted and said the exact same things. I want you to know that. Nothing's personal, but God knows everyone's heart. He knows my heart. He knows everyone's heart in the room, okay? And when it comes to lethal issues, there needs to be something done about those three issues. And the last one is the one everybody throws their hands up. And I got literally almost arrested at our local Mercy Health Department just for bringing it up that I wanted a nasal sputum. Now, that gets people like Kathy Stepp real excited. Well, we can just arrest all these
30
people.
seconds.
We can call them crazy. That's illegal. We can't do that, okay? I'm sorry. Her response was, what? I'm not more important than everybody else here? No, we need people that are going to let us speak. We need freedom of speech. We need freedom of assembly. I understand totally what you're saying, the going on about COVID. But Leishmania is going to hit in July to September. It takes more than 5 minutes to discuss, and I think it should be brought up with experts, and we need results. And I would love to see some real hearts show up here. Because if you really care about yourself and want to step even one step above where you're at right now, you better take that leishmania seriously. And those other two issues, I think, really. Because, like I said, I'm lucky to be alive. And the paperwork she showed you, the CDC does nothing. And I can tell you all about the lack of accountability in America, but plenty more to be said than and I'm telling you, Kathy Stepp looks like a really nice person, like a kindergarten teacher. Really nice. I mean, seriously, are you Kathy Stepp? Yes, ma'am. You seem like one of the sweetest people, and if I had hired you, I'd be sticking up for you too. But Larry didn't answer his phone. I understand. You've got too many phone calls. But my life was on the line. So I'm going to scream a little bit, okay? If we'd switch positions, if we had, okay, you've been throwing a fit at me. And yeah, we need communication between departments. And we can't just go hands off to the hospital. No, they are responsible. If they're killing people on,
Thank you, Amber.
Yes, thank you. So please, we've asked many times, please offer the opportunity for freedom of speech somewhere other than just the beginning of this.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any?
Your Honor, we still have some more speakers.
Do you think that was a Freudian slip?
Our next speaker is Gary Groman, 350 South Wildwood Drive, speaking on Alderman comments.
That's funny.
Mr. Chairman, with the understanding that Alderman did not have to answer any of my questions, it requested that I be permitted to ask them questions during this presentation.
You know the rules, you can ask anything you want. It's up to the alderman whether they choose to respond.
Thank you. Alderwoman Denham, as my elected alderwoman, I would ask you to indicate your ratification of the following statements by indicating either yes or no after I read the statement. Statement, did I call you this afternoon and tell you I was going to ask you questions about the recent news article about your statements in the Branson Globe?
Yes.
Your statement, I have worked with many directors and employees at the city in the past. I visited them recently. They knew I would feel compassion if they had just been placed under yet another dictator-type city administrator. They confided in me as a person who has been in their trenches. Every person I spoke with spoke so highly of Kathy. Many stated that she is the best thing that has happened to City Hall ever. Do you ratify that, yes or no?
Yes.
Your statement. To that I would add, my statement. To that I would add, I have personally spoken with several directors and senior personnel who to a person echo that same sentiment. Now back to your statement, I'm sorry. In talking about Administrator Stepp, you said, quote, inexperienced, definitely not. She was a regional administrator for the EPA, overseeing 6 states' Environmental Protection Agency programs, responsible for over 1,000 employees and implementing over $3 million in grants. She was also a cabinet secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, overseeing 4,000 employees and managing a budget of over $500 million annually. She owned a residential home building company for 14 years and served as commissioner on Branson's Planning Commission for 1.5 years. No experience. Again, the facts speak for themselves. Would you ratify that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Your statement. Planning and development oversees special use permits, zoning and plating. Not all development requires planning commission approval. Applicants submit their projects through the building permit process. The following numbers speak for themselves. In 2021, the total value of building permits was $80,372,842. In October 2022, it was $88,432,826. Did you ratify that, yes or no?
Yes, that's correct.
The only vacant directorship or senior level position in City Hall is the city attorney, and the board is currently filling that position. Under Kathy Stepp, there have been well-deserved promotions and extraordinarily talented new hires. In my humble opinion, our City Hall now has a dream team ready to work together to move Branson into a prosperous future. Kathy Stepp walked into some challenging situations when she started in October 2022. Every step was difficult. The police department issue was heart-wrenching. The aldermen were required to read the reports of city employees who were reduced to just a number in that report. Many of the statements brought me to tears. Per city ordinance, the chief and sergeant who have been placed on administrative leave have the opportunity to go public with their attorneys in front of the board in public. However, they chose not to. They resigned, asking nothing in return. After the Missouri Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission reviewed the documents, they took the case. It was then out of our hands. You ratify that?
Yes, that's correct.
Rodriguez claims, and Best has consistently repeated, as though as a fact, that 3 aldermen and mayor are running City Hall. To me, this is the most degrading comment made by both Rodriguez and Best. It is a stab at all aldermen. It even puts Rodriguez in a bad light. All our current aldermen are intelligent adults who think and vote for themselves. The board's voting record demonstrates the truth of the matter. Would you ratify that, yes or no?
Yes.
My statement. In fact, I believe that on all the actions the board has taken, the record will show that the mayor has only voted twice to break a tie. Once to repeal the mask ordinance, and the second, the hiring of Kathy Stepp. For what it matters, I believe that the members of this board, all members, unlike some in the near past, will vote their conscience and what they believe is right, not according to a predetermined agenda affiliation. Back to you. In her most recent mailer, candidate Best said, decisions are being made behind closed doors that circumvent the rules. That circumvent the rules, that's good. Oh. Let me cancel that one. In the same mailer, she said, decisions are being made behind closed doors that circumvent rules and regulations that are being put in the code. This is a yes or no question. Are you aware of anything that the board has put into the Branson Municipal Code that circumvents the rules and regulations, let alone was done behind closed doors? Doesn't every change to the Branson Municipal Code have to follow a process that brings it before the board and allows for public comment?
Yes.
Okay? Just curious, if any, this is me, if any of the other board members believe that their decisions are being made behind closed doors and circumvent the rules, and regulations and are being put in the code, would you please let us know? Because I don't believe any of you would do that. You have to follow a process. It's all done in public. Before anything goes into the code, it's done in public. But do any of you believe that that's true?
I don't believe it's true.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
First of all, thank you for bringing that back up for any of you out there that did not read the Globe. I requested that information be put in. Like I said, I am a stickler for research, and I'm not going to put something out that is not true. Those were correct comments that I made. I've been to a lot of forums. I don't appreciate when lies are being told, so I just wanted to come out and say the truth, because I believe our public deserves to hear the truth. As far as the ordinances go, any amendment to an ordinance requires public hearing, and that's how we amend an ordinance. And did you have, I know you're kind of rushed
Well,
through.
just to follow up on you. You guys, even you, Mr. Rodriguez, you're not guys that hide behind anything. You speak your minds. We might not always agree, but you speak your minds. I just can't picture you conducting business that way. So, any other questions? Or? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Your Honor, the next speaker is Robin Friedrich, 401 Truman, speaking on speed bump and posted speed limit signs.
This is my first time here.
That's fine.
Okay. My name is Robin Frederick, and Clay Cooper, he's my alderman. And I had expressed some concern about a speed bump because we have excessive speeding from 76 going over to the red route. And the kids playing and getting off the school bus and some of the dead animals along the way. We've had a recent police presence there trying to help out, but it's good when it's there, but it's not enough. And I just kind of was asking for a speed bump.
Robin,
I don't
thank
know
you.
how
Bless
to
your
I
heart.
don't know how to get to that, so.
Clay, go ahead.
Well, Robin had reached out, and actually I've had probably at least 4 citizens in our neighborhood, because I live right there off of Truman as well. I don't know if Marshall's had any, but in the last week with concerns about not the traffic. I mean, a lot of people use that to get to the, to down the road or up through Dixie or whatever, but the excessive speed, and I witness it all the time. Every time I come out of my garage, get in the truck, I wish I could record how many people run the stop sign there at Skate World, that 4-way. It's every single day. I don't mean not slow down, like just run it.
Yeah.
And are you in view of that 4-way? Where is
I'm
that?
not. I'm
You're up
right
there.
where the curve is, so when they come around, a lot of times the cars they're going fast, so they'll kind of hit their brakes when they see a kid because of visibility.
And there's a lot of kids and a lot of school bus stops there too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she had reached out to me, and I invited her to come down and speak up. And Joshua from Lost Boys lives up the street. He's been on me a couple of times about I don't know what the process is for the speed humps or bumps or whatever, but I do know that was really helped on Cliff Drive a few years back. And Point Royale has the speed humps, I think, at Point Rail. And I know that, there are new, they speed humps, but it does solve the problem. But there is a lot of fast vehicles. I mean, I wouldn't let my young kids play out in the
Yeah.
yard. I live right there on the corner because it's dangerous and they're moving fast. And the stop sign is an issue there too. Also, I was going to read, this is from another neighbor. Can I read this real quick? She asked if she tried to get here but couldn't. Thank you for discussing the speeding issue on Truman Drive. I live at 403 Truman and enjoy sitting on the front porch whenever possible. I grew up here in the city, so the amount of traffic doesn't bother me. My issue is the excessive speeding through the residential neighborhood. I'm in view of the four-way stop at Truman and Miller Drive. Excuse me. Rarely do I see a vehicle come to a full stop, especially the northbound traffic. We lost our cat due to a speeding car not too long back. I've asked to have a patrol car monitor the four-way stop before. I'm asking that speed humps be considered. They're not unsightly like speed bumps are. They allow traffic to keep moving at a reasonable speed. I know that Point Rail has them in other nicer neighborhoods. Thank you for your consideration. Shelley Evans. So, again, I don't know what the process is. Maybe we could meet with the chief and see if he has some suggestions or.
Let's ask Kathy to.
Yeah, we can certainly take this up, so I'll convene a meeting with Chief and with Michael from Public Works. But if you'd be so kind to forward me the
Yeah,
email correspondence you received.
Okay.
And thank you, ma'am, for coming tonight to
Sure.
raise
Yeah.
awareness on that.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
You helped
you.
me in the past with the driveway issue.
Yes, I did. I
Robin
knew your
Frederick.
voice was familiar. It's good to see you.
Very much so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you,
You're
Robin.
welcome. And if we could maybe even consider signs to start out, if the speed bump thing is, kind of big, maybe just more signs or something.
Rob,
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Robin, Kathy Stepp is gonna get with our police chief, engineers, Michael, and they're gonna come up with some solutions. And
Thank you.
And we will get, this board will be updated.
Thank you so much. I've
bet.
got to go to work, but I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
up and raising our
All
awareness.
right, very good.
Robin, would you like me to write you a note? It's your absence at work. No.
Don't run any stop signs or speed, Robin. Get there safely.
Wow.
Your Honor, the final speaker this evening is Cherry Webster, 118 Country Bluff Drive, speaking on Alderman Representation Part 2.
Exciting.
Good evening. At the last hearing, I quoted a statement I heard Alderman Rodriguez make in 2 public forums regarding the city administrator and how the city is run. Quote, "Right now, she has standing meetings with 3 aldermen. That's it. There's 3 aldermen that don't have any with her." End quote. Oh, the outrage from Alderman Fenton and Cooper. But why? Was the statement not factual? Or was it factual and you just didn't want it made known publicly? Let's look at somebody else's facts in comparison to the outrage. I have 35 pages from a Sunshine Law records request documenting the date and alderman name for all alderman appointments the city administrator has had from her installation October the 3rd through March 14th. Standing monthly appointments are documented for Howden, the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of the month from last October through this November. LeBlanc, the 1st Friday of the month from last. How about the other 3 aldermen? Rodriguez readily admits he's had no monthly meetings. Records requests confirm that. On October 15th, Stepp emailed an invitation, quote, "to a breakfast or lunch meeting, hoping to get to know you better," end quote. No documented response. Next, Fenton's outrage comments at the 38-minute 30 mark, quote, "As usual, facts are missing from your presentation. I have my meeting scheduled with Kathy this Monday, so I'm not boycotting anybody," end quote. Records requests yielded no documents for 2022. 2023, January 11th, Alderman Fenton and Cooper from 2 different wards met with Stepp the day after the closed executive session for personnel the night before. January 19th, Stepp's office emailed an invitation to arrange a monthly recurring meeting. No documented response. January 24th, as a point of reference, was the closed executive session where this threesome voted to fire Stepp. February 22nd, another email extended a second invitation to set up a monthly recurring meeting. 5 days later, Fenton replied, Monday afternoons would be perfect. The reply asked if recurring meetings on the third Monday of each month would work. The first one would be March 20th. Fenton replied, quote, I think that should work just fine. I'll get this first one added to my work calendar, and we'll go with that for now, end quote. The facts. March 14th, Fenton stated, I have my meeting scheduled with Kathy this Monday. I'm not boycotting anybody. What were you doing between October 3rd and your first meeting 5 months later? Boycotting her? Has your first meeting become a recurring appointment yet? Or are you waiting for the election results next week before you decide? Next, Cooper. Cooper's outrage comments at the 38-minute 55 mark. Quote, if Rodriguez is saying stuff, you haven't heard me saying that. I don't appreciate your attack. I have not said I'm boycotting her. I've not said anything about that, end quote. Is that statement equivalent to saying I'm not boycotting her? Continuing Cooper's quote, Rodriguez is a big boy. He can talk for himself and I'll talk for myself, end quote. And yet Cooper did not talk for himself any further. He never offered any meeting facts, only outrage. Why? Documented records show 2022, no meetings with STEP. 2023, only January 11th, the same non-recurring joint meeting previously mentioned for Fenton. The facts, March 14th, Cooper stated, I have not said I'm boycotting her. True statement. What do the documented records show? Not a single one-on-one meeting in 5 months. Methinks the alderman doth protest too much. This behavior of boycotting the city administrator for months because you didn't like the hiring process and then playing the CYA game is very disappointing. Have you three not considered that your constituents might go after your bond and request your removal from the board for failing to fully represent their issues before the administrator? Your complete participation is truly needed. Tonight, instead of doubling down on CYA, shooting the messenger, feigning outrage, presenting favorable facts while omitting detrimental facts, might you consider this? Man up. Own it. People respect that approach. Just lean over the dais, look at Kathy's step, and tell her you'll be contacting her office tomorrow to schedule your recurring monthly meeting. Any darts you want to throw my way?
Thank you, Cherry.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I don't know this is for a fact because this is my first year on the board, but I've heard about 2-on-1 meetings with an administrator in the past, but I would venture to say that our previous city administrator did not have standing meetings with aldermen. Part of the reason why I thought Kathy would be such a phenomenal city administrator is the ability to have such meetings. I'm not doing this to call anybody out. I'm buddies with Chuck here and everything, but you know, there's a lot of talk about an agenda, this and that. I mean, let's just take this song that we had tonight. Something I had an idea about, contacted the mayor, contacted the city administrator, and then we made it happen. That's what all of us should have the ability to do, and that I didn't feel that a certain type of city administrator would allow for that to happen. So I'm honored by the fact that I get to sit down with Kathy every 2 weeks, and not to push an agenda, but if I have an idea and if I bring an idea from the citizens, I think it's an invaluable resource, and I've truly appreciated the fact that we have a city administrator that's willing to sit down with us.
Thank you, Marshall. No other speakers? Aw. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any items any member of the audience would like to see taken down to be discussed? Any items from the members of the board? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please read the items on the consent agenda, please?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes for the March 14th, 2023 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of Industrial Development Authority minutes for the March 21st, 2022 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of Finance Committee minutes for the December 8th, 2022 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of Human Resources Committee minutes for the February 15th, 2023 meeting. Acknowledgement of disbursements for February 21st, 2023 through March 10th, 2023. And final reading of Bill Number 6279, an ordinance approving participation by the City of Branson, Missouri in the new national opioid settlements and authorizing the mayor to execute the documents related thereto. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda. The floor is open for a motion approving all items on the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote on the consent agenda.
Alderman Rodriguez. It's a yes. Okay. The result of the vote is 6-0. Motion carries. Your Honor, the next item is a presentation and discussion regarding Branson Hills CID.
So we're going to begin with a staff report from Ben Hart.
Good evening. And that was quick. First of all, I want to provide a couple caveats. Baker Tilly is not the financial advisor for the CID, Branson Hills CID. I am not an attorney. We've got one sitting right there, and he's an expert at CIDs and TIFs in Missouri, thank goodness. And to his benefit, he has not been privileged to this conversation around Branson Hills. I've done more research. He's just started. So I'm going to rely on him some for technical aspects, but the rest of this conversation really was a request of this board just to kind of get some information out for the public that certain questions have been asked by the public, just to get information out and maybe lay some groundwork. And then as other questions come in, we can bring them back as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Branson Hills development. This is a picture of the city, as you know. Up to the north in that orange box is the area we're looking at. Within that box, there are 3 different development districts. The bigger one that's shaded kind of a flesh-colored tone is the Branson Hills CID. That's the big one. The one in the bottom, it's green, that's Branson Hills TIF. And the one that's pink just to the south of there is Branson Hills Shops. Branson Hill TIF and Branson Hills Shops are both TIF districts. Just a little bit better view of that. I split them apart so you can kind of see it blown up, and we'll provide this, obviously, this presentation out for the public as well. And just by the way, this week I'm staying at the Hilton at the top of that rock, and it's phenomenal view. Not the Hilton, the Hampton Inn at the top of that rock, and it is phenomenal view up there. But that being said, there are, like I said, there is a CID and a TIF, and these can get confusing really quick. CIDs are technically, and I'm going to tongue-in-cheek, Joe's going to probably give me an F for some of this language, but CIDs are political subdivisions, or can be political subdivisions of the state, right? So in this case, the responsibility of the city was to accept the petition and create the district. From there, in this particular instance, the CID is governed by a separate body. They've even got a separate financial advisor and a separate bond counsel that advise them as they move forward. There's a 1% sales tax on top. It's called an add-on sales tax. It's on top of all purchases and sales tax to go through that district. There's also special assessments that are dedicated for the debt service payments on, and we'll get into this in a minute, but for debt that was issued for water and wastewater improvements throughout that district. Financing alternatives, in this case, this TIF, or this CID is a 65-year CID. That actually ended with state law that says any CID created after August 28th of 21 is sunsetted at 27 years. It can't go on to perpetuity. This case, this fit under that because it was created in 2006. Like I said, it was a 1% sales tax, and the creating documents actually contemplate a special assessment, and assessment does exist out there. And typically, they're special obligation revenue bonds, and I'll touch on that in a minute. Eligibility is another key nuance to a CID versus a TIF. In this case, the eligibility really requires a majority of the assessed value owners and a majority of the owners in that assessed value bucket. Obviously, they can pay for public or private, and this is another little nuance. They can pay for public or private facilities or infrastructure. In this case, it was used to pay for the infrastructure, water, wastewater infrastructure. On a CID, I'm just going to run through these. On the CID, there are two silos. One's a special assessments district, or assessments that get levied by the county. Actually, the district levies says for the county to levy it. The county collects the special assessments, and it's given right back to the CID in a normal fashion. Sales tax is the same way. Point of sale, sales tax gets collected by the state, just like they do for us when it comes through the general. They collect the CID 1% add-on. Now, that sales tax comes through us. We use it then to pay the debt service and the bonds. That's the only administrative function we have. There's no rulemaking at all, no legislation at all that this body has with regard to the CID. We're just a pass-through to make the payments on the bonds.
Excuse me, Ben. I should have prefaced this.
You betcha.
Just to bring everybody up to speed. There's been some questions. Cody Fenton has been asked in his ward is Branson Hills. So there's been residents within Branson Hills that have been asking the city, their aldermen, about the special assessments and all the taxes and everything that's going on at Branson Hills.
Right.
So Cody brought the request, so we're asking Ben. So I should have said this at the beginning. So what Ben's explaining is really to those residents within Branson Hills of how that structure's set up and
correct.
what little involvement the city is with these.
Right.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all right. And so the revenues that are collected off that CID comes to us. We turn around and make the bond payments, and that's the only function we have on this particular CID, and it's only for Branson Hills CID. Other CIDs can be set up very different, and we have interlocal agreements that do just that. On a tax increment finance district, it's a special purpose district. In this case, it's the only eligibility criteria it has is a conservation or economic development area. It's got to be one of those three. That's on a TIF area. So if you've got improvements in a TIF area, it's no longer going to be blighted. It's going to be really hard to get a TIF approved again and on that same footprint. Not saying it's impossible, it's just going to be extremely difficult to do that. In this case, it's public facilities only. It's public facilities as in the city infrastructure that it can pay for. The financing alternatives here, it goes up to a maximum of 23 years. It captures the increment, if you will, the increment above what that baseline is. So if I put a house on a vacant land, the vacant land is the base. The improvements I make is the increment. In this case, in my second bullet there is wrong. It's up to 50% of sales tax increment is allocated toward that TIF, not 100%. And then again, it's special obligation revenue bond. This is very different than a CID. The CID, well, I'll just get to the next one right away. The TIF in this case only has really one of those tranches, where the CID had the sales tax as well as the point of sales. This is the point of sales and point of sales only. So it's got the sales tax that comes in, it's got the baseline that goes one way, and it's got the increment that goes a separate way. The baseline goes to the city and the county, the taxing districts, which we have an ability to bill that back depending on the development. The new increment then goes to the developer or bonds, whichever one is applied to it. So this is very different than a CID. Just for comparison's sake, what I've got here is a set of slides that shows some factual data around, and then we're going to get to the questions that the mayor had asked. Some factual data around the CID and the TIF. In the CID case, it was set up in 2006. It governed by, like I said, governed by a separate district, and it's not a city entity. When I say it's not a city entity, if you look at your annual financial report, you'll have what's called component units. They're not departments of the city, but they're so closely aligned that from an investing public, they see it as a part of the city. TIFs are that way, CIDs are not. In this case, the term is 65 years. We talked about that. The Branson Hills TIF shuts off in 2027. Cost funded out of the whole project. Wastewater and the water was the one that was bonded with the bonds. The rest of it is just eligible cost within that CID. On the right-hand side, you can see the retail area. This is the infrastructure serving that retail area. When you look at the funding mechanisms, in 2007, there was a bond issue, $18.5 million, and it's backed by special assessments and the sales tax coming off of the property. So both of those are there, and this is going to be important when we answer the question later. The sales tax and the special assessments are there to pay those bonds and only those taxes. There's an ability in Missouri and Kansas, for that matter, with TIFs and CIDs for an annual appropriation to stand behind the bonds. In this case, it doesn't happen because it's a separate entity. And so the city has no obligation whatsoever in this bond issue. The length of the funding mechanism on both cases is 20 years. And on the Branson Hills is a 2005 issue, and you kind of see some of the numbers that are there. We actively manage the column on the right. We're actively managing those bond issues going through our office. And I say our office, our finance department. The bond status itself, it's important to point out that the principal payments in the CID for 2017 through 2022 are unpaid on the bonds. So they're effectively in default. I'm going to say that. A lot of people are going to say, well, doesn't that affect the city? My answer to you is it does not affect the city. Remember, this is a separate governing body. I've been doing this for 30 years. Analyst calls will never talk about a CID unless you've got spin-off sales tax coming off of that through your general source. Then it's a positive, and you have that happening now. So they're effectively in default. Those are 20-year bonds. They just started their default status in 2017 through 2022. On the Branson Hills side, we're actually prepaying the penalty because there's enough revenue coming off of that we're actually pay it down faster than what the bond is structured for. As far as the kind of other notes, you can see what those look like here. We kind of touched on a lot of those. On the left-hand side at the very bottom, it says projected annual assessments. This is lifted right out of the certifying documents that created the CID. The projected annual assessments in this case per lot, residential lot is $1,200, and per condo unit is $500 to $900. Whether that actually took place, finally, this is what was in the creating documents. It'd take more research to figure out what each individual is paying.
Ben, back to your last point. I understand under the Branson Hills CID, the city has nothing to do with that.
Correct.
You mentioned that the principal payments from 2017 to 2022 are unpaid.
Correct.
Is there any concern, the residents that live at Branson Hills, would they have any concern about that? Is it putting them at risk?
It doesn't put them at risk.
Okay.
And that's a great question. It does not put them at risk at all. The only obligation they have is to pay the assessments or the levied sales tax when they shop in those districts, if it's covered by that sales tax. That's the only way it would affect them.
Sure. So in my line of work, I've done condo associations, homeowners associations, property owner. So I'm familiar with the idea of special assessments in that world.
Yeah.
If the term ends in 2027, payments haven't been made seemingly for the last 5 years, right. Maybe even going on 6 years now.
Correct.
There's 18.6 million due here in a few years. What prevents, and I think this is some of the concerns of people that have reached out to me, what prevents the board, or does anything prevent the board from saying, okay, well, now we're going to levy a special assessment of $250,000 a household? I mean,
that's another great question. The creating documents provide a maximum assessment that's allowed by those documents. That was passed by law, local law, through the ordinance when the body at the time adopted that petition. So that actually limits the level that those assessments can go up to. And again, it's on, at the time, it was a per parcel basis. When it's split out, then that obviously changes things a little bit. But there's a cap on what they can charge.
Sure. And I think I can confidently say I believe the number is quite a bit higher than 1,200 for this last year. My second question is, and you may not be the person to answer this, and this may not even be appropriate for city discussion, but that money has seemingly been collected through property taxes. And if it hadn't, that property's gone to tax sale, most likely.
Right.
Any idea why the payment's not being made and what might be happening with that money?
Are you referring to the bond issue or?
Yeah, sorry, why the
bond issue?
payments for the last 5 years haven't been made?
Yeah, in this case, the revenue that is generated, it just isn't obviously making up for what they thought would take place.
So in other words,
within
they're
the original
paying
scheme.
interest, but they're barely keeping up with that.
Yeah, so what happens when it goes into default, the trustee or essentially the bank that actually holds the bonds and represents the bond owners, they've got certain measures they got to jump through once that event of default comes into place. A lot of the outcome of that is sent through the judicial process, lawsuits, court system. What the indenture or the rule book, if you will, for those bond issues, when it goes through an event of a default, there are specific measures that the trustee takes place. So they'll get $1 in for $1 of debt service. They've got to take that $1 and then spread it out amongst all of those bonds that are not paid to the degree that they can be paid. They remain outstanding until they're paid down. One of the things that the indenture calls for, the owners of those bonds can actually petition for the trustee to make all of the bonds, all 18 million, due now. It's like saying your mortgage, since you're not making it, the bank's going to go, well, it's all due now. And what that does is then put everybody on the level playing field. It all gets distributed, allocated pro rata to each one of the bondholders. Now, I say that these bonds were issued as a high-risk obligation. So those entities or those investors that wanted 5, 6, 7% return on their investment, when they invest in this, they know that that's a high risk. They know that there's a risk that this doesn't take place. They also know there's nobody standing behind these except for the revenue coming off that district. So therefore, they know that if they don't have enough revenue, they could be at a loss of all of their principal. And that's obviously a risk they're willing to take. You see a lot of institutional buyers, big banks, mutual funds buy this kind of instrument because they're looking for that high yield to offset some of the lower yields. Some of the high yields make sense for them. Highly productive, highly profitable CIDs that they'll make their payments. Some of them don't.
So and I don't mean to be jumping ahead if you're getting
That's
there.
right.
But, so if this is, due in full in 4 years, what happens? What happens
Yeah, and at this point, they haven't called it all.
Sure.
So each bond payment that hasn't been paid just gets stacked up along with the rest of them, and they're part of that allocation process. Now, if something happens, another store or another revenue producer gets placed in the district that actually pumps out the sales tax, that could catch everybody up. This is a 20-year bond issue. You're right. It matures here pretty soon, right? Once it matures, they're still unpaid. So the trustee doesn't go away. Well, technically, in the judicial process, there's an avenue where the trustee doesn't go away until the TIF shuts off. That's 65 years from now. So this could hang on and pay itself off well in excess of that 20-year bond issue.
Okay, I think you just kind of got to the heart of the issue. Yeah. I think this is the question people have been asking for years. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that beyond 2027, the special assessments and the tax for the CID could continue for as much as 65 years.
Correct.
Until that goes away.
That's one of the avenues they have. And it could go anywhere. It gets extremely complicated in 20 years when that final maturity happens. It gets real complicated from then on. They've got multiple avenues. There's an avenue where the bond just shuts off, and if it doesn't pay, you're out of here. You're off. I mean, you're just out of luck. I say the bond investor is left with no money as a return. There's that possibility. And who knows what they're going to do, what the trustee's going to do. Again, we have no say in this. It's your constituents who are concerned validly. But one, the developer can't come back and levy additional tax to cover this, nor are they really worried about it.
You said they cannot come
They
back.
cannot do that by their certificate, by the creating documents. They can't do that. Nor have I ever seen one that's willing to do that. Usually they sell their properties and they're gone. They could care less whether it's making money or not. They know it's a high-risk deal. They know that the investors know that it's a high-risk deal. They're on to the next deal. They're not going to hang around and increase assessments. And for that matter, then the governing body of the CID board, they're bound by the same structure as that application that comes through that you guys, that this body at that time approved. They're bound by the same laws. So they can't go through and raise those. So at this point, the trustee has full control of all the revenues coming in, and that's really where they're at. Sorry.
Please steer me straight if I'm being naive or missing something here.
Go ahead.
But isn't it counterintuitive in the first place to have a TIF on top of a SID?
These are separate.
Yeah,
They're in separate areas.
And I think to clarify,
Yeah,
the SID is on the residential properties.
Correct.
There's a little bit of commercial in that residential area,
right.
but the TIF from the sales tax is all the commercial property out at Branson Hills.
Yeah, and I had the same question coming in because that's where this gets confusing, at least for me it did. So I just pulled out of again, thanks to our GIS guys. I pulled right off of our website just to show what those are. The TIF right here, these are the TIFs. They're not even connected to that CID.
And those are super TIFs, right, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
No, right, no, they're not.
These are not
They're
super TIFs.
The two of them together are connected, but they're not super TIFs.
Branson Landing is the only super TIF.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Ben, I got a question for you. I'm following the same questions that Cody is about the SID.
Yep.
Their payments have went up recently. Do you know why?
Their debt payments or their assessment payments?
The assessment payments?
The property owners?
Yeah, this past year, and this went back to when the city took a donation of some property too.
Yeah.
The board reassessed it, and everybody's payments went up, in some cases pretty significantly.
Yeah, so, again, without having additional information, this is my opinion, and it's not Baker Tilly. What I've seen in the past happen, anytime you put together an amortization schedule on a bond issue, it usually increases in payment on a regular basis. So you pay more at the end than you did at the beginning. There's a high probability that took place. So as those payments go up, the assessments will then go up just to cover the payment.
So this isn't because the city took on extra property?
No.
We're not passing the bill to...
No, and we'll get to that point. What you just said, we'll get to that point, because I know that's a point of contention too. Any other questions on this? These are great questions.
Ben, is there a risk to the property owners that are in that community, a financial risk to them? Because when normal people that don't participate in these schemes, right?
Right.
They're just used to mortgages and the bank calls the
Right.
note, like, man, you're late, we're taking it, right? We're coming at you. So there's no risk of that happening to the
No.
property owners? Okay,
No.
I wanted to make sure that got.
From the point of view of these bonds, the public is not at risk.
Okay.
The only risk they have is to make their payments, right, their tax payments. Their obligation is at the levy point, and that's it. What the county levies you've got to pay those taxes. If you don't, it goes into foreclosure. Foreclosure sale, the assessments stay with the property. So if a foreclosure happens and another person picks up that foreclosure, as they make the payments go toward the current taxes, property taxes, and then toward any unpaid assessments.
Are any of the improvements that were listed there, like the water, sewer, golf course, are any of those pledged as security on these bonds? Does it work that way?
No,
Okay, so they couldn't come back
That's a
and
great question, yeah, no.
say like, we're taking a golf course.
Yeah, there's no mortgage on any of the properties, which is a
I'm
possibility.
trying to
with some-
visualize somebody
yeah.
coming and removing a golf course.
You can try it.
I have a question for Ben. Part of, with the question of the assessment going up, didn't Taney County assessor just assess straight across the county? And that's
Right,
part of
yeah.
the assessment?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you.
That's a great point, too. I know my personal assessment went way up. So that kind of gets to, so just on the right-hand side, it just shows a lot of the revenues that come in are allocated toward that TIF side, right? So you can kind of see that. Again, we actively manage that right-hand side on a regular basis, but the left-hand side is not up to us to do. Some of the questions that we got asked that had come out and I've seen asked are obviously legitimate questions. Where does the SID and the TIF expire? When do they expire? We touched on that. The 65-year SID from the point of adoption, which would be 2006, and then the TIF expires in 2027.
So Ben, before you move on from that,
Yep.
the TIF portion of Branson Hills is primarily all of the commercial property.
Right.
I recall when this TIF was approved, it was based on the financial forecast of just a couple stores.
Exactly. And there's more than just a couple.
There's more than a couple stores.
Right.
So you would think if those extra tax dollars are going to the bonds,
Right.
then one would think it would have been paid off. I know it's not.
Right.
The question is, what happens at 2027
Right.
regarding the city?
So for the city, since the TIF revenues are only the increment, it's not an add-on tax that would eventually go away, it's the increment.
Yeah.
It's the amount that we already would have lived off of.
Which is about
As part of our
100%
budget.
because there was no sales tax.
All of it comes back into us. Let's say that. Any levied sales tax in that increment goes back out to the levy, the districts that levied it. So if the county had a piece of this, it goes to the county.
So
But we get the
who's
sales tax.
responsible for the remaining balance at 2027?
On the TIF, there won't be one.
It will be amortized out?
It'll be amortized out and paid off. The SID may still have
Yeah.
amount outstanding.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
where it could take,
So-
on the SID side, it could take several different avenues.
In your
where-
5-year forecast, that, I've got to believe, that is a
Is part of it.
significant amount of
Yeah.
money
Yeah.
that will start coming to the city
Yeah.
in 4 years.
Yeah,
Okay, so, thank you. I want to get back to the issue at hand, though, for the residents out there.
Yeah, and I don't want to be perceived as, I thought this was a bad idea. I'm not giving any
No, right.
opinion on this whatsoever, and I do think that potential, once that TIF goes away and the revenue, I do think that's going to be good for the
it's
city.
really going to be good, yeah.
But yeah, it's these residential owners that are looking at, yes, property taxes have gone up, yes, but when they see that same SID going up, and I've been hearing this question for 10-plus years now. People want to know, when's it over? When's it going to be paid off? And I think what I'm hearing you say tonight as just a third-party, observer of this, it could go another, however many years left are in 65 years.
Yeah, I mean,
40.
it could go back the full 65 years. I'm not saying that it will.
Sure.
And
Yeah, I
I don't,
understand.
I mean, that's one possibility. The other possibility, the tap turns off and it's done.
But
just
the
all depends on what
assessments
they're
for the residents, am I hearing, the assessment for the residents will continue for 65 years?
It could.
To the point that they're able to pay the bonds off. Yes. It could continue into perpetuity. I mean, not
After the bond-
perpetuity, but
After
to
the bonds are
length
paid
of the
off, would
stay.
those assessments go away?
I'm sorry?
Would those assessments go away once those bonds are paid off?
Yes. Yeah, they will. Because they're only there to back the bonds, and that's it. The bonds are paid off, the assessments go away. So what the SID does, and we do, SID does it, we do it in Missouri and Kansas all the time too, is when you've got a bond payment, they'll take that bond payment and divide it by the number of parcels, and that's your assessment. So if there's no bond payment, you don't have anything to spread, you're done.
So real world, Cody, over time, because there's numerous unsold lots out there, or vacant lots, right? So as more homes get built,
Correct,
those assessments will also apply to this.
exactly.
Yeah, I think that was always the idea, right?
That's
As this
exactly right.
developed out, it would,
Yep.
potentially start reducing this. But I think, again, the concern is in 5 years, the payments haven't even covered
Yeah.
the interest with what is already there. And new property development in that area, granted, it's happening I mean, my office is up there, so I'm pretty familiar with the area. But I think for the foreseeable future, we're not going to see homes just going up left and right in Branson Hills area.
Yeah, and a big fat caveat here is if you talk to a bond attorney, they'll probably give you a lot better explanation than what I can about the legal impacts of the legal road forward when it comes to those bonds getting paid off.
Well, and it also true, and again, I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be good for the city, but like the hospital property, they won't have to pay, being that they're a nonprofit organization.
Right.
The Recplex and the city-owned property, we don't have to pay.
Correct.
So, I mean, you have pretty substantial chunks of land up there that aren't paying, and rightfully so based on how it's set up, but
Yeah.
but you just don't see a whole lot of new neighborhoods starting up over there, so.
So-
Interesting.
Yeah, were you going to address the other question about the fact that some of that land was donated to the city?
Assessments,
That's
that's my
next?
last question
Okay.
right there.
Thank you.
That's a great, I didn't pay you to say that. That's because that's usually one of the number one concerns is how does it change, when does it change, right? In the state of Missouri, any entity that is a public entity that is exempt from taxes is also exempt from assessments. There's no obligation for the city. Say, if the city accepted any kind of property out of a CID, there's no exemption, or there's no law that says you're required to pay a special assessment. Now, and here's where I had a conversation with Joe this afternoon. It's extremely hard to get a property out of that CID. And one of the major reasons was because in the bond documents, you cannot harm the bondholders. So if somebody tries to donate property because they simply don't want to pay the taxes, one, you guys would have to accept that. No, you wouldn't have to. It would come before you for a decision to accept or deny, if it got to that stage. Because if somebody wants to donate it, then they've got to prove that there's no harm to the other bondholders. Now, that's right now in default. There's already harm to the bondholders, so it'd be next to impossible to get that property out of there.
But I thought we took a donation of land and
We did, there was.
we got an
100
opinion regarding, basically we could voluntarily pay it, but we didn't have to.
Correct. And is it still part of, and I'm not aware of that, but is it still part of the CID?
As far as I know, but the opinion that we received was, well, you can either pay it if you want to, or you don't have to.
Yeah, so. and
Meaning
that's-
as a city.
So that's the next leg, right, that drops. In the event that there is a change in that parcel like that, then the remaining parcels, that special assessment, that division happens with a fewer number of parcels. Now, the opposite is true too. You've got a property that actually builds out there, then it's spread amongst more parcels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I think, when this issue came up last fall and the CID board was meeting and we were getting questions about was the city going to, stroke a
Accept it or
check?
not.
And as I understand it, the city chose not to do that because we weren't legally obligated to. And so as a result of that caused that, or at least in part caused that assessment to go up, was my understanding. And I think, again, that's where you had this, some people upset with the fact that the city took that donation of land, which in turn resulted, even if it was $5, it arguably resulted in a higher assessment for the other people in that area.
Yeah, you're right. And when the bonds were issued, there was language put in those bonds, not that every individual would read those bonds, but there's actually language in the bonds that says that there's a possibility that if the city purchases, or a public entity, county or city purchases property and doesn't participate in the assessment, then the assessments would go up on the current parcel owners.
So-
There's actual language in there that states that.
So specifically, and let's say it was 100 acres, before that property was donated, I'm assuming there was a assessment
I
on
would
that
assume there
land,
was, right?
correct?
I would assume that, yes.
Now, here's what was interesting. As I understand it, also hadn't been paid for a number of years.
When you say a number, we're talking 20 years?
Like, I think it was 10
Okay.
at least that it had not been.
So here's a
paid.
piece of land that no assessments were paid on for 10 years.
Right.
And that land was donated to the city, and the city accepted it.
And then as a result of that, that's when the increase occurred. As I understand it, that's when the increase.
Yeah, and
occurred.
this is where my knowledge parts with what actually happened, because
Yeah.
we don't represent this.
So
CID.
was the portion that was assessed reallocated over the remaining properties?
I don't know factually whether that happened. There's language in the bonds that allow that to happen. Whether the CID did that or not, I'm not aware of.
And you don't
I
know
think
that?
the answer is yes, because they
They
sent
could.
their attorney, and we received a copy of the letter from their attorney that gave the opinion that when the city did that, they were going to take that dollar amount and reassess it against.
Including the last 10 years?
No, I don't think they can go back and
No,
collect.
it's with the
Just from
current.
Prior, it was just for
Moving
that
forward.
current
The
year.
delinquency on that property just attributed toward the delinquency on the bond issue. They're not going to go back and recollect that.
Right, I don't know if they can, but at least for 2022, from the time forward where we had it, that amount was reassessed amongst.
Cody, were you on the board when we took that, accepted that? I don't recall, I remember us talking about the property taxes past due. I don't know that this board was informed on the issue you're raising as far as the assessments.
I don't disagree with that, I think had a different picture been painted, it would have probably warranted a different discussion, but
At least we would have discussed it,
sure.
yeah.
Joe, am I missing anything? Okay. And Kathy doesn't go to jail on this one? No, and you're right. I can only speak to what I would give you if that situation presented itself. What the board should have saw was what's the impact on the current tax holders? Does it have an increase? That way you're fully aware of what that impact, long-term impact would look like. There may be a legitimate reason for that to come to the city. It may be a development issue. There's a number of different possibilities. I've seen that happen as well. Voluntary payment of tax, there's all kind of possibilities that are out there.
So I don't think you received good news, but,
Yeah,
but you received the answers you were
yeah,
looking
I
for.
mean, I think it was helpful to finally, like I said, I mean, I've been hearing about this in various forms for 10 years now, and then recently, I know Chuck and I were getting a lot of calls from people that, and I think it was a result of, whether it was property taxes going up and therefore the assessments went up, whatever their reason was, their payments went up, which naturally, people were.
And like any governing body, their avenue for that conversation is that CID board.
True.
As much as it would be you guys if it was a TIF. It's them, is that CID board is their representative. That's
Sure.
exactly where they need to be going for.
Yeah, and I think they're aware of that, and
Yeah.
that's at least the discussion I had. But I felt like this is a big chunk of our, at least Ward 2, where I am, and so I felt like it was helpful, and so I appreciate you bringing this to us to kind of just give us some background. So as we're fielding these calls, it's not just call this person, call this person.
Yeah, right, just get some information out.
Here's why that's the case, and now call this person.
Right.
So I appreciate it.
Hey, Ben, if we wouldn't have took that land in, were their payments still gone up? Because that piece of land wasn't paying anything.
Well, that's a tough question. That's a tough question, because theoretically, if that still was in delinquent mode, then eventually somebody's going to pay that property. And it's going to be the current landowners that pays that. If it's always in delinquent, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff running around in my head how that wouldn't happen, but theoretically, if it stays delinquent for 20 years, then somebody's going to end up paying that share.
Thank you.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
You good with that, Cody?
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah, thank you.
Ben, we appreciate it. Are there
You're
any
welcome.
questions from anyone in the audience regarding this topic? Any other questions from the board? Ben, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Pardon my interruption, but I just noticed that we had some very special guests join the room a few moments ago, and I think two of them might be royal princesses based on their names. Apparently, there's a Princess Vivian that's joining us today, and a Princess Fiona that's joining us today, and it'd be nice if you would take a minute to introduce them to everybody.
Well, come on up here. Hey, I'm going to interrupt the meeting just for a minute. These are my little angels. These are my granddaughters. And I'm going to take this time I was just going to take a minute. What's real special is they live in San Diego, the land of fruits. I don't get to see them very often because they live in San Diego. So I probably get to spend 10 days a year or so with them. So they came in tonight. They're going to be in town for a few days, and we're going to play Branson. We're going to find out all the fun things there are to do in Branson. Kathy, I will not be at finance tomorrow.
Okay.
I will not be at the 76 CID meeting tomorrow.
Were you going to introduce the parents
Oh,
of
yeah.
these children, or?
You know, that's funny. Kathy
getting
asked me
awkward.
about that earlier, and I told Kathy, ever since these two were born, whenever Leanne and I get to interact with them, it's, oh, Vivian, oh, Fiona, da, 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 da. And then Brian every now and then will lean in and say, hi, Dad. So Kathy asked, when you were coming in, because I was all about them, and Kathy says, well, does your son and daughter-in-law have a name? So my son Brian, my daughter-in-law Stephanie, they are residents of San Diego. I will say they moved to Branson, and they were Branson residents for 4 years. It's a whole nother story. So as soon as this meeting's over, which means I'm going to stop asking questions, which is good news for you, Jonas and Rachel. Huh? Yeah, bring it on, buddy. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome back to Branson.
You know what? Let's take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
Mayor,
Where's Kathy? Oh, there she is. What's that?
can I say something before? Yeah.
I'm going to call this meeting back to order. Alderman LeBlanc has a comment.
Ben, hey, thanks for explaining that CID and TIF thing. The only thing missing were pictures. Remember, like you did in finance, bring pictures, better understanding. Now to the warm and fuzzy of, we talked about that property being donated to us. And specifically the conversation, as I recall it, was the warm and fuzzy of it was a quality of life issue that we looked at when we decided to take that as a donation because of its proximity to the recplex, the way the terrain is. It was a lot of that property is almost undevelopable. But we looked at it as a way that we could add it to our parks and rec for walking trails, for biking trails, for physical activity things that we could offer to the community in an attempt to expand the reach that we had from a just a health perspective to the community. And that was the reason why we voted unanimously to take that property back as a donation, because that was the highest and best use for that property, knowing that it was never going to be, the financial obligation was never going to be fulfilled, Yeah. And so I just want people to understand that was the thought process that we went through. It wasn't a matter of just taking it back. We're not in the real estate business. It was that we have intention that it's going to be part of our Parks and Recs program. And in fact, I talked to Cindy probably 3 weeks ago, when I went look at the Recplex, and that's one of the things that she's planning forward for is biking trails, walking trails, exercise spaces, and things like that. So I just want people to be aware of that this wasn't just like a haphazard decision, like, oh, let's just take it back. Like, we really had intention behind that whenever we made that decision.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks for saying that. Anything to add, Cody? Okay, you good? I was remiss on one, excuse me, Jonas, I was remiss on one statement earlier, and I was reminded, so allow me to say it, my oldest granddaughter was born in Branson, Missouri. Listen to her explain that to her friends back in San Diego.
where?
Let's see. What do you say we move on to the next item? We're going to have new rules. We're going to read the item number, no staff report, and we're going to vote.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
For such a hot button issue.
The sooner I get out of here, the sooner I can go visit. Jonas, you're on deck.
Hey,
What do you have, Hillary?
Let's get it on the floor first before we
Okay.
talk about it.
Oh.
Just a second.
Hurry up.
Your Honor, the next item is a resolution approving the 2023 final marketing plan and budget of the Branson Lakes Area Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitors Bureau. The floor is open for a motion adopting the resolution.
We have a motion, a second. In a second.
I do not have a second.
Someone second it.
Does someone want to just verbally second?
Second.
Okay.
And it says the staff report from Kathy Stepp. No. I'm reading what I'm told to read, Cody Fenton. I'm reading the words.
Oh, maybe it did. Well, regardless, I'm happy to give the staff report, Mayor. I just want to keep it short and sweet and introduce to you Jonas Argis, whom you all know. He's standing in as now the interim director for the Chamber's CVB here in Branson. And before Jonas starts off, I want to thank him so much for his team being willing to have several meetings with me, get me up to speed on the latest ideas that they've got, the energy that's behind that, the outreach that they've done to try and communicate that they're really listening and trying to adopt as much of the input as possible into the way forward and be, us being their customer. And I really think that message has taken root with the folks that I've spoken with. And of course, we're going to be working with them and making sure that continues throughout, so you don't have to worry about that. But Jonas, I think I've done a fairly decent intro here, and now I'm going to turn it over to you to take it home.
Well, I just want to echo and with the gratitude of the extra time that we've taken to get to this point. I know that I don't want to dwell on the past, but during my time as we foresee it in the near future, We're going to be the most professional organization we can be. We're going to work to execute the contract as it is written, and we're going to continue to have dialogue to make sure that we put out the best product that represents the people and the community of Branson. So you have my promise to do that. Also want to thank you. I did have to leave early the last meeting we had, and I believe Rachel stayed for maybe another hour and ironed some things out and addressed questions and concerns. So, I'm much more comfortable talking about the previous item, but I would stand here to all the answers that I don't have, Rachel's here to back me up to make sure that I don't say anything that will come back to haunt me, because I've been known to do that occasionally. So, would stand for any questions, comments, concerns, or criticisms.
Before we take it to the board, are there any members in the audience have any questions or comments regarding this? Hearing none, any members of the board? We're approving the contract, the long negotiated contract that we've reached an agreement on.
Well, the contract's been approved. I think this is the
No,
amended.
I'm sorry, the marketing
This is
plan.
the amended marketing plan and the budget.
Correct.
Yep.
And I know Clay has reviewed it, I know Marshall's reviewed it, I've reviewed it, and I think we're all in agreement that it's accomplishing what this board wants to have accomplished.
And I'm happy to say that as soon as we're done here, Rachel's actually going to a photo shoot to add more content that fits those requirements.
She's going to follow my granddaughters around town and take photos?
Well, I felt bad because I was really going to pick on you, Mayor, because I just felt the need that I could have some fun, but now that they've been here, I would feel bad and feel like a schmuck, so I'm not.
Love you, Jonas.
He should know not to, when I speak before him and he doesn't show up, he should worry about that next time.
Very true. So, are there any questions or comments from the board? Marshall?
Jonas, some question about the term national being in goal A. Can we pull that up?
Goal A on the plan? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is
The word
Is that the TCD plan or the city's amended plan?
Well,
Is it referring to a national ad buy, national digital, national cable?
it would help me if it got pulled up. It was just something in a message that I received from a citizen. That's all right.
Would you like me to pull something up for you?
That's all right.
Do you know what kind of in the neighborhood of what section?
We can move on. It's okay.
We're all under the understanding that we've seen where the monies are going to be spent, both from TCD and tourism tax. And Kathy is the spokesperson for the city. And Kathy is going to have the authority to approve anything that we do with the tourism tax,
Yep.
right? So Kathy's going to have the final okey dokey.
Okay.
All right, we're good.
Did we find it?
I don't think we need to with Kathy.
No, we're okay, we're okay.
With Kathy having
Okay.
that. Any questions from the board?
So with the comment that you just made, that Kathy will have the final, anything after it's agreed upon tonight, if there are some changes to be made or anything, Kathy Stepp will be able to do that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just for clarity, Kathy is the representative of the city. Can you imagine poor Jonas or Rachel trying to negotiate with 7 people? So we said Kathy.
I don't negotiate.
Actually, you have very well. So Kathy is the sole voice, and Kathy takes direction from this board.
Yeah. Which that's codified in the contract
Yeah.
that we signed. That was already
Yeah.
approved. Yeah.
Okay. Y'all ready to vote? Let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0. Motion carries.
Jonas, your presentation was remarkable.
Thank you. I know. And can I bother you for just a couple minutes? A couple things. One, I would like to extend a warm welcome to everybody on the board, and please come to the community marketing presentation for for the community on April the 5th, which is a Wednesday. It's from 9 to 11. All the providers and contractors that we work with to deliver on these contracts will be at the Chamber Building and doing presentations. So everything will be there. You can have if you have questions. I think Jerry Henry will be doing 2 presentations, one at 9:15 and one at 10:15. So I know that, a lot of folks are familiar with what Jerry has done. And so just know that it's kind of come and go, but for his presentations, they are scheduled. So you may want to make sure that you hit those two points in time. So again, please come, because one of the things that we're going to make happen to the best of our ability is the 30-second and the 15-second TV spot that we're reworking for Faith Family Flag Fund. We'll have that to view at that presentation.
Yahoo!
Yep. And I can't help myself. Is it out of line to comment on the last topic? Just because I'm more comfortable there. So I think, is it okay, Randy?
We already asked for.
Okay, well, a little context. 2004, 2005, 2006. When I owned Schlotzsky's, I went into that neighborhood and looked at a lot. It was $90,000. Right? Just think if 2008-9 didn't happen, what would have happened, that real estate market? We wouldn't be sitting here. I mean, obviously things happen in the future, right? But this assessment, this debt of those bonds paying for the infrastructure would be a non-issue, right? So I think a lot of it's the timing. And as we look even at the other side of Highway 248, Branson Commerce Park is in a worse position. So on the commercial side, they've had no building. That bond debt is still that's still there. That's why we've not been successful in putting any commercial development in that space, because of that assessment that's still hanging there. So I think the timing adds a little context to that, because the last thing we want is the audience or anybody thinking, well, those dirty old developers putting sliding a fast one on those property owners. It was the macro economy that did more to that than anything else. Those are good tools for economic development. And so timing was really bad for that deal. So just some context.
Thank you, Jonas.
Yep. And thank you again. Good night.
Mayor, I just wanted to remind the board that I did send calendar invites to you all for the presentation that Jonas was talking about.
Yes.
So, okay, just so you.
I'm not going to put up with any more of these interruptions. We've got an agenda.
I'm sorry. And I'm drinking non-caffeinated soda too, and it's still not helping, so thank you.
We've got an
sir.
agenda we need to
Yes.
stick to.
Yes.
Right, Cody?
You started yelling.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Your Honor, the next item is a resolution to direct the city administrator to launch a red tape review effort. The floor is open for a motion adopting this resolution.
We have a motion.
I don't know what's going on with that, but does somebody want to verbally second?
Second.
Thank you.
So, a few talking points.
Is this my time for my staff report? Yes, right?
No,
No, you want to say something?
I want to say something.
Oh, okay.
And then
My
you can do your
apologies.
staff report. After consulting with city administrator and city staff, I've identified the need for the city administrator to launch a comprehensive red tape review effort across our city government. With the are you making fun of me over down there, lady?
No, it's Hillary.
With the introduction of the following red tape review resolution, we will further build upon and enhance the city's efforts to make Branson the best place in the region to do business. Now, you're laughing at me.
I'm not. You're doing great.
This bold initiative is a major step forward for our city to become a better partner with local businesses, be more transparent and accountable to taxpayers, and to ensure our city is truly open for business. I think I just got.
Me about operating at the speed of business instead of the speed of government, and that's something that I take to heart. And we've got the means to be able to do that. But one of the most important things that I expect to come out of this particular effort is that we're going to be hearing from stakeholders, people who are affected by the action or inaction of local government. when it comes to unwieldy processes or unclear ordinances, duplicative ordinances, maybe ordinances that clash with state rules or state laws as well. And so we're going to be doing a front-to-back, top-to-bottom review in each department of all of the different codes when it comes to doing business in Branson. So there's this perception out there by some, certainly not by all, that Branson can be very unwieldy and difficult to do business in. We have to change that. And we actually have the means to do that. We've got department directors now who are all moving in the same direction, who want clarity, who want streamlining, who want technology. All the different tools that you all have blessed us with is the means to be able to carry out an important effort like this. So just to give you a quick outline, we're going to be doing a lot of external outreach, and I've asked Jonas, I wish Jonas was still here, but Jonas has been great to work with to get the chamber involved to help us with this as well, to get stakeholders from different sectors into different roundtables to sit down with me and with the affected directors and have just an open heart-to-heart, like what's the problem? And have the venting session and say, what have you experienced in the past? I'll listen, you know, and hear what your worries and concerns and offenses, real or imagined, might have been. So that's an important first step. And of course, engaging the public as well. So while we're talking to different sectors, say entertainment sector, show sector, hospitality, et cetera, builders and developers, bringing them in small groups and having real intimate conversations with them to find out what we can do better and asking them for the solutions. Because if there's anything I've learned in my career in government, it's that rarely are the solutions within the walls of the government. They're always out in the public. And learning about how people do business and how we get in the way, when we learn and understand what's really going on in the real world, what does it take to put a shovel in the ground, instead of just read ordinances about it. It's a very different thing when you actually have to do it in real life, and we need to make sure we're not in the way of that productivity. So we'll start with that. When we get the recommendations, and we've heard from different stakeholders, we're going to review those with department directors, discuss the feasibility of implementation. Then we move to the implementation phase, which could result in code changes, policy procedure changes, guidance documents perhaps, creating public-facing, user-friendly documents and guides on how to navigate city services and programs. And you're seeing some of those steps that are already in motion with Chad's presentation earlier. And then our plan is to bring you all a package, almost like an omnibus type thing, but without the dark cloud that hangs over that word when you hear it in Congress. So we want to make sure that it's specific just to the need that we're trying to address and bring you a package of recommended changes. We're expecting this effort to take between 8 to 12 months because we want to make sure we don't go too fast. We don't want to skip over important opinions in the public. And we want to make sure that your voices are heard as well and you guys have time to hash over our different ideas and solutions. So again, I just want to thank you, Mayor, for the clarity on what direction to move the city. I've heard you, our team has heard you, and we are ready to rock and roll. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Hillary, it says in here we're going to vote on this. We're voting to authorize her to move forward?
You're voting to adopt the resolution, authorizing her to move forward. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Any questions from members of the board?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would just say, you know, a couple years ago, we initiated a sign code review. I hope that in this, we still look at the sign code again, you know, because...
All code.
Fair enough. And the second thing I would say, I don't think it falls on this administration so much, but I'm a little bit concerned, and maybe I'll speak for Ruth a little bit too here, as far as the 2030 plan is concerned, and an idea that we were going to sort of take that up again and discuss that. It's something that's sort of been kicked around on planning and zoning for 3 or 4 years, I would say, and hasn't come up yet. Obviously, COVID was a thing, but I hope that we at least get a time frame, because that's a concern a lot of the citizens have, and I know fellow board members and I have as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
I agree that's important, Marshall. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other comments? Any questions, comments from the audience? No. Let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0. Motion carries. Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 6280, an ordinance amending Chapters 1 and 82 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to definitions and rules of construction and taxation. The floor is almost open for a motion to approve the first reading of bill number 6280.
We have a motion, and we'll get a verbal second. We have a second, and we'll get a staff report from Ben.
So why not start that red tape right now? One of the things come from finance, Matt Henry actually, with the individuals he talks to in the public, informed us that we receive checks for anywhere from 3 cents to $100 on a monthly basis. A little ridiculous and very expensive process to take in that size of check. His idea was, let's just do it on a quarterly basis. We'll follow the state's calendar when they do this same thing. Great, got with Hillary, wrote it up, that's what you got in front of you. This actually takes it to a quarterly basis at a certain level of those taxes received that will not impact the fluctuations or trends you see on a regular basis because it's so low. But it's a high volume of documents coming through our office.
What a great example. Any questions from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote. Ben, thank you for doing that.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Your Honor, this is the first reading of bill number 6281, an ordinance amending section 2-383 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to project initiation. The floor is open for motion to approve the first reading of bill number 6281.
We have a motion. We have a verbal second from Chuck, and I'll get a staff report from Ben Hart, please.
So the other one was external, this one's internal for red tape burning, if you will. This actually came from the departments. We have a process where we have, in the past, performed 2 RFQs to get professional services in the door. What this does is clarify that if there's an RFQ that contains professional services for capital projects that encompasses whether it's above ground or below ground infrastructure, that department director can use that RFQ for their selection process. What this does is clarify that to make it a little more clear that that's available to the departments.
Pretty simple. Questions from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote. And if you're not careful, you're going to start applying common sense to some of this.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Your Honor, the next item is, this is the first reading of bill number 6282, an ordinance approving the contract with Hood and Associates CPAS PC for auditing services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of bill number 6282. Second. Thank you.
We have a motion, second staff report from Ben.
This is asking for your approval to renew their contract. There's our current auditors that we use. We did an RFP, got 2 responses in. One was double the price of the other one, so it becomes just a common sense issue.
Any questions from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Your Honor, this is the first reading of bill number 6283, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Arvest Bank for purchase card services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of bill number 6283.
We have a motion? Second. And a second, and we'll get a staff report from Ben.
This is a simple contract renewal for our purchasing card, no changes.
Any questions from the audience? Questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Your Honor, this is the first reading of bill number 6284, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Central Bank for banking services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of bill number 6284.
We have a motion?
Second.
And a second was staff report from Ben.
This is a contract renewal, just like the Arvest. It's central bank, and it's by state law, we're required to re-adopt or approve our depository, and that's all this is doing.
Any questions from the audience? Any questions from the board? What happened if central bank goes under like SVB did?
And then we go see Pam.
Yeah, Arvest. Yeah.
Then we go see Arvest.
Or Arvest? Is your money protected? Because we're only insured up to $250,000. Good enough for me. Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0. Motion carries. Your Honor, this is a first reading of Bill Number 6285, an ordinance amending the adopted 2022 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies in the general fund for an increase in transfers. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6285.
We have a motion? Second, staff report from Ben, please.
So when we began the conversation with the 23 budget, we estimated 22 to end at a $10 million fund balance. We're actually going to hit 14 million and change. What this does is allow us to sweep 3.75 million over into our savings account, if you will, for use, and about 2 items for other capital that would otherwise have been debt funded. So what this does is sweep that off. It also allows us to continue to have an increase in fund balance. So it does still account for a surplus. It just takes the majority of that money and puts it to better use than sticking it in a savings, in our own fund balance.
Which fund was?
This is general fund.
General fund was anticipating a $10 million
Fund balance.
fund
And
balance.
it's now a 14
It
million.
ended up 14 million.
Yes. Yeah.
Way to go, Ben.
Wasn't me, it was the directors. Yeah. You're right.
Wow. Any questions, comments, or applauses from the audience? Questions, comments, applause from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0. Motion carries. Your Honor, this is a first reading of Bill Number 6286, an ordinance amending the adopted 2023 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies in the Tourism Fund for an increase in tourism marketing expenses. The floor, hang on, I'm so sorry. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6286.
We have a motion? And a second. Staff report from Ben, please.
So every year we, just like we did for the last one, the last item, we sweep off the 25%, put it over an account, or actually submit it to the chamber for marketing purposes. Last year, it took us 10 months to do that. This time, it's going to take us 2 per contract. Per contract, we gave them a number in February. This actually allows us to submit 85% of our excess fund balance over to them now. After the audit, the rest of it goes to them.
Does the board understand what I mean, that was a huge improvement. It really was, releasing those monies early. So
That's what happens.
So I was asked the question, excuse the noise. I was asked the question, at the end of August, when our audit's done, we do anticipate there'll be more funds. It'll be a small amount, but there's still additional funds to go to
Correct.
to marketing. Right, Kathy? Yes. Okay. Have you given your report?
Yep.
Have I asked them questions?
Yes.
I've asked you guys.
You've already
questions.
voted. No. If you're willing to say it.
Okay, so we're ready to vote. Let's vote. What he says, just read the dang paper.
The result of the vote is 6-0. Motion carries. Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 6287, an ordinance amending the adopted 2023 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies in the Capital Improvement Fund for an increase in ERP expenses. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6287.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Staff report from Ben.
So in the study session, you got a glimpse of what the ERP could do for us. Within the budget process, we had the ERP budgeted at $2 million, understanding that that was probably going to be lease financed over a 5 to 10 year period. That would have been anywhere from 40 to, let's say, $250,000 in interest alone to at least finance this thing. What this does is drop that number because of what Chad's negotiated with Tyler from $2 million to $1.3 million to cover all of the ERP that we see now. If there's other efficiencies coming up, I'll be right back in front of you for another amendment. That'll come from Chad and I if that happens, though. What this does is allow us to move forward with the contract you'll see here in about one more item. It allows us to fund that contract.
So we budgeted 2 million.
Yep.
We're being asked to authorize 1.3.
Yep.
That will be paid out over 3 years.
No, this will be cash funded.
Okay.
Instead of debt funded, it'll be cash funded.
Love it when that happens.
Sorry?
Now can I say way to go, Ben?
Can I what?
Earlier I said way to go, Ben. You said no. Now can I say way to go?
Way to go, Ben.
No, I still them.
Ben
I
and
can't, I
Chad.
can't do that. I can't do that. No, we did spend a lot of money in the city, but it's not all me.
I mean, that's great though, right? You
Oh,
reduce
absolutely.
the cost, and now we're not financing.
Yeah, and just all seriousness aside, there's, if you remember, there's really two shoes that dropped here. One, it was the savings from not spending a whole lot of money because we knew we were coming out of a COVID era, didn't know where we were headed, right? That's one of the things that the directors did. They held tight, and we took advantage of that. Sales tax bounced back farther than we've thought that could happen. So those two right there allowed us to do this. So now we're just taking that and putting it to use.
Yeah.
I can't tell you enough how important this ERP is going to be. Not to use chamber math, but this has got an ability to pay itself back over a 3 to 4 year period and then some.
I was going to ask you that, what you thought. 3 to 4 years?
Absolutely.
Wow. And obviously to be in a position where we can, it's almost we're on a pay-as-you-go program, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We can afford it, we're paying cash for it, just
Make it
like
happen.
our household budget.
This also doesn't use all of that money that you just swept. So it leaves some of it in our bank.
Yeah. Any other questions from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0. Motion carries. Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 6288, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Tyler Technologies for enterprise resource planning software and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6288.
We have a motion? Second. And a second. We'll get a staff report from Chad.
So I normally get to cheat and present from, behind the computer screen, but this time I thought, you know what, when we're asking for $1.2 million, that probably requires me to come down and talk to you guys at the dais, so.
Which is why you wore your coat.
Precisely, yeah, for sure. So, again, I'm going to make this brief because we talked about this in study session, and I imagine everyone's getting tired as the night goes on. That being said, if there's any questions that come up, just feel free to throw them out as we go along, okay? So again, this is an agreement with Tyler Technologies for our ERP system. When we look at solving a problem, you want to look at what are the issues that you're trying to solve, right? Before you come up with a solution, you got to know the questions to ask. And the current issues we have, and some of this might shock you, but we use an AS400, currently, an AS400-based system that was designed came out in 1988. So we were somewhere in the middle 90s when we started using that system. If anybody remembers a green screen, right? That's essentially what we have with a pretty interface that's built onto it. We pay $120,000, a little over that, annually right now. The input-output is extremely labor-intensive. Getting information in and out, the reporting is atrocious. It's really bad. The interfaces to other systems often are non-existent because the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? It's just, it's hard to integrate with and it's costly to integrate with. And frankly, I expect, while there's no announcement, I expect just by the nature of what this product is, at some point soon, the vendor is going to say, hey, we're not going to support this anymore. And we don't want to be caught in that situation, right? We want to be ahead of the curve. And as we've talked about tonight and many times recently, we need to move at the speed of business, not the speed of government, which I believe is where we're at with our current system. So just real quick here, when you look at the various departments, you've got human resources that need applicant tracking and onboarding. I'm going to skip police for now. We've got public works, utilities, and frankly, parks. I'd throw that in there as well. They're in desperate need of an asset management and work order system. And of course, with finance, we need to be more efficient with our financials, our payroll. We need a timekeeping system. Everything from utility billing, accounts receivable, accounts payable. We need better solutions for every one of those items. And of course, our system today does not integrate with GIS, which again, in our study session, we dove into just a little bit. There's no integration there whatsoever. And so we needed something that would serve that purpose, and it was of paramount importance. So a few goals we have with this project. Obviously, we want to enhance productivity. Again, this is high level. We want to decrease data silos that we have today. We need real-time fiscal transparency. We've heard you, and we work on that every day, and this is a huge leap. And we need something that's easy to use and that is hosted, something that we don't have to spend a tremendous amount of time and resources to update, something that the vendor takes care of on our behalf. So what are the steps in the project? Well, this should look fairly familiar for those that were in the last session we had at the convention center, strategic session. Step one, obviously you have to have a project kickoff. And in that, you have to define what your goals are. We created a department stakeholder group, which I'll dive into in just a little bit some more. And we had to figure out what we wanted out of the system. Obviously, you got to have funding, and you all shown that in the 23 budget, this is a priority, and we set aside, again, that $2 million in the budget. Thankfully, we didn't have to use all that. Again, we'll go into the numbers in just a minute. We drafted an RFP using a collaborative process with input from every department. We used that same committee to evaluate those responses and score those. And of course, we're here before you tonight to execute a contract, pending your approval. So in terms of a timeline, project kickoff was third quarter 2022. This is the same timeline that I brought you the last time you seen this slide, right? Last fall, I think it was. Maybe it was, might have been summer. Same timeline, and I'm happy to report we're right on track. We got the funding. The RFP was published in late 2022, and here we are in first quarter of 23 before you with a negotiated contract with the vendor. So what process did we use? Again, we used employees that use the current system. So they're the experts, the subject matter experts in their own department, and we desperately needed their input to make sure we selected the right system. And we used that process to make sure that as best we could, we vetted all these vendors, and no one knows the details of their jobs better than them, right? It was great as part of those meetings, and Kathy was able to join several of those, and again, several people in the room was in those. And it was great to see the collaboration, the idea sharing, the commitment from the employees. A product that IT would go out and procure and say, hey, you guys are going to use this, go implement it. That would never be successful, and we knew that right out of the gate. We had to be involved at every step of the process with these committee members, with these employees that know their jobs well, that are professionals in their fields. And it really, I'm so proud of that process and how it's turned out so far. So here's the nitty-gritty of the proposals that came back. After we drafted the RFP, we got the proposals back. You're going to see a wide variety of cost here. And you're going to look at that and go, well, wait a minute. Why on earth are we looking at $1.2 million if we could get something for $98,000? And the truth is, it's apples and oranges, right? BS&A is a great company. We were very impressed with that company. However, their niche is, municipalities that are much smaller than us, I would say. They had strong financials, but pretty much everything else just didn't meet the mark. They had no transparency, things like that. They just weren't as robust as what we needed because, again, our goal was to completely transform our operations, and we didn't feel like they just didn't come close. And so as appealing as that cost is, it didn't meet our needs. OpenGov is a vendor that's really coming up in the world of ERP systems. They are known, and their bread and butter is transparency platforms, hence the name. They're extremely good at it. However, they just recently kind of stepped into the ERP game with financial products, things like that, excuse me, by acquiring another company. And the product just, it did not impress. So their transparency stuff is fantastic. Pretty much everything else, with the exception of their asset management, it didn't hit the mark whatsoever. And in their proposal, they only provided estimated pricing. It was a little bit of a weird response, to be honest with you. But that brings us to Tyler. We sat through in this process, I can't tell you how many hours, in this room mostly, looking at every one of these vendors, multiple times in some cases. I would venture to say hundreds of hours of staff time to really dig into this and make sure that the contract we're bringing you is the contract that meets our needs and the company and solution that meets our needs. So you can see here their implementation cost is just under $600,000. And their reoccurring cost is just under $220,000. And we'll dig into those numbers just a little bit here. Again, just to kind of reiterate what I already said, that, our goal was to, again, transform our operations. And Tyler was the clear and only vendor that could allow us to do that. And, cost is always a consideration, but it was not the driving factor in this decision-making process. And I hope that everyone can appreciate that. So when you break down their numbers just a little bit, the annual reoccurring cost to offer us that product, our suite of products, I should say, again, is $219,797. Implementation cost is just under $600,000, as I mentioned. There's some hardware and maintenance costs thrown in this agreement. The truth is, until we get farther into the implementation process, that number is going to fluctuate because, we don't know the exact parameters we need until we dig into that project. But I don't anticipate it's going to fluctuate a lot. And so the contract total, again, spread over 3 years, is $1,264,294. And what I didn't mention, which is huge, is the implementation cost is a not to exceed number. As we contacted other cities, we contacted other municipalities, and we said, hey, what was your experience in these processes? What's your experience with Tyler and other ERP vendors? By far, one of their biggest, chief complaints, I would say, was the project. It's easy to let that get out of hand, and it just drug on, and our cost kept racking up and racking up. So, the agreement, and that's not unique to Tyler, I would say. That's any initiative like this that's a major software platform, you run the risk of doing that. And so up front, I met with Adam, who's, by the way, he's on with us right now. And I said, look, we can't have that happen. What can we do here? And what we negotiated was a not to exceed amount. So in a perfect world, we won't come to that $600,000 mark, right? In a perfect world, it might be half that. I can't tell you with certainty that we will be there, but it's a not to exceed amount, and it's going to be billed as used, right? And so we're proud of that. Their SaaS fees, or software as a service fees, are billed quarterly. And again, implementation, training, et cetera, that's invoiced as delivered. So when you think about the financial considerations of that, it's a huge number, right? We don't take that lightly as staff. And when you look at what we have today, we've got 4 different software platforms that we're going to be replacing this with, right? And our recurring cost on those 4 platforms annually is just over $175,000. So when you look at the difference of that and what we're realizing as a cost increase minus the implementation, right, is around $45,000 a year. In my way of looking at that is, the difference is less than the, adding an entry-level employee to our organization by the time you factor in their benefits, which is not insignificant, right? But when you look at the return on investment, it's far, far more than 1 employee. And I can't stand here and tell you exactly what that number is, but I can confidently tell you it's far, far more than that. And so we're excited about that. But I thought that was important to point out as we're talking about these big numbers, right? In terms of a timeline, again, 3 years, this is a estimated timeline, I'll tell you that up front. However, I'm gonna do everything in my power to meet this goal and keep this project on track. One of the things that I've heard from the directors and staff recently is, the enterprise asset management, the one on bottom there that's not slated till 25. We're hearing, look, Chad, we need that now. We need that immediately. And, we hear you, and we're going to do everything we can to bump that up and slot things in where we can to get the most bang for our buck as soon as possible, right? And just 2 quick slides left. When you look at all the breadth of what we're purchasing here and what we're going to be implementing, it's a complete financial management suite from accounting, accounts payable. I'm going to point out a couple things we just don't have today. Project and grant accounting, if we have it at all, to my knowledge, we don't. Kind of looking at Ben here. It's huge, right? It's huge to have those abilities. Utility billing meter interfaces. We don't have direct interfaces today. That's going to be another huge component. Scheduling, I'm looking for HR. I don't think they're in the room tonight, but again, with PD, even fire and all employees, we don't have good, reliable, scheduling platforms. That's another addition that we're going to have with this. Time and attendance with mobile access. Risk management. Bob's been needing something to help track our risk management for a long time, and we're going to meet those needs. And again, the civic services, the resident access, workforce mobile platforms. And we can't, what am I trying to say here? I can't overemphasize the data insights part of this. Today, if we have a question or a problem, we have to go manually try to run a report, and to run that report, you have to have often a staff member that needs to know how to technically write that report to get that data out of the system. And all those days will be gone because you have a dashboard with real-time reporting that you can have, and you've seen that earlier, at a moment's notice on a plethora of things that are important when we're making decisions, right? It's huge, and we're very excited about that. Other than that, the GIS integration, again, we don't have that today. That'll be full-fledged and a feature in this system as well. Questions or comments?
Chad, I have a couple questions.
Yep.
When I watched the very brief presentation you had on this. It is an extremely comprehensive program. Once it's up and running, which, and I'm really glad you said 3 years, then I guess one question is, when you were looking at other platforms out there, this is so comprehensive. Do you have any thoughts that it might be, and when I ask the question, is it too comprehensive, meaning is it going to be, it's only as good as the information that's put in, so these, quote, timely reports will only be timely if every single department is entering the information timely.
Certainly.
So, and I'm clearly not second guessing, I just wanted to raise the question of, with all your research and everybody you've talked to and the directors and the staff, they're all on board on this?
100%.
100%, okay?
I mean, I would go so far as to say they're begging for it and very, very excited. And I'm,
Wow.
I'm looking at the, people in the audience that work for the city. Yeah, is it ambitious? Is this project as a whole ambitious, which I think is kind of maybe where you're coming from? Absolutely. I think anybody that would stand up here and tell you otherwise would probably not be honest. It's ambitious, but it's, I truly believe in my heart of hearts, and I know that it's where we have to go as a city to operate more efficiently and to meet the taxpayers and constituents' needs.
Okay.
Which I think in some cases we're not doing today. In some areas, we could improve.
Yeah.
Always.
I agree with you, I just wanted to raise the question. The other question I have is, and it was really Chuck's question, it was a great question that he asked earlier. We see what it'll do, we see what the timeframes are. What are we doing from A to B?
What are we doing from A to B in the context of?
Well, when you showed the timeframes,
Yep.
some things we don't start until mid-next year.
Right, so you can't implement this all in one full swoop, obviously.
So things like, I know you showed us the one software for managing capital projects.
Yeah.
Finance right now, we're still using the green screen. Are we going to continue using green screen, and I'm referring to the 1990 program,
Sure.
until March of next year?
So if you look at that timeline, financials is first, and for a good reason, right?
Well, you can't ask Ben.
I mean,
Don't you
are they
think,
most
Ben,
important,
don't
Ben?
you think it's most important? Cindy, don't you think Parks and Rec is most important?
But it's a great question, Mayor, and the truth is, it just takes time to implement this stuff. It's not flipping a switch in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so when you kind of visualize what it takes to implement financials, right? I guess I would go back to every one of these right here
Yes.
and here.
Yeah.
And I would argue this goes right along with that in that phase. Those bullet points are sub-projects, if you will. Those modules are a project in and of itself to stand up. Now, sometimes you stand those up at about the same time because you just, out of necessity, you have to bring on accounts payable and accounts receivable, for example, at the same time, right? But yeah, it's going to take time and effort, and there will be a period of time where we're less efficient, probably, as we have multiple systems. There'll be some level of dual entry, even though we are going to migrate data, right? There'll be a short window where there's some dual entry and things like that. And I'll be very upfront and honest and tell you, I don't have every one of those details figured out just yet.
Sure, sure. So you might have helped me ask the question I'm trying to ask. If there's a subcategory, and if subcategories are completed, could those be implemented waiting for the entire ship?
It depends on what you're referring to. And let me say this. In some cases, possibly. In a lot of cases, no. And so what I'd like to do is have Adam just jump on real quick. Are you there, Adam?
I am.
So are you understanding the mayor's question? I think.
I believe I am.
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, folks. Thanks again, Mayor Milton and board members. Mayor Milton, I think what I hear you asking is, how do you orchestrate a complex transition from a current system which manages all the finance and operational requirements of your city and implement work streams that have to be stood up while city operations can continue to run? It's a process that's born over many years of experience from Tyler staff and personnel. Chad's right. There are sequences of applications that'll be stood up that can go live and stand alone, that'll have very little implication to existing city infrastructure and application. There alternatively will be times during the project where we're going to do multiple iterations of conversions from your existing system to the new system. And so we've got lots of tools at our disposal to ensure that city operations are consistent and delivered at an optimal level today, and we won't let that slack during the implementation process. So again, it's one of the reasons I think your staff has placed their trust in us, is through reference checks and doing their due diligence and interviews with us. We got into a lot of the detail around this. And I believe I don't want to put words in their mouths, but clearly they're presenting a contract to you folks tonight. I think they felt very confident in our ability to manage those risks and help shepherd you from where you are today on this antiquated system to a modern, productive ERP system that will allow your city to continue to promote local business as well your constituents.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Mayor?
You know what? It did. And I know this, number one, I'm excited. I am so excited to get started. I just wanted to at least have some of the dialogue. So how exciting is it that all of your directors are on board 100%, right? Because there has to be buy-in, right? Because they're going to be doing a ton of the work.
It's critical.
But they also have spent the hours and hours to see what benefits they're going to get from this. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and raise a couple high-level questions. Cody, you okay with, do you have any questions on moving forward with this? Ruth? Clay? Chuck?
I got a question, Chad.
Sure.
I know you're always updating our cybersecurity. You're on top of that. Having this one interactive large system in a cloud, is that going to help with cybersecurity or?
So I would say I feel way more comfortable putting our trust in Tyler than our current vendor. They're a much larger organization. They're way more professionally ran organization. We did go back and forth a bit on some, language around cybersecurity insurance and things like that, and that language is in there. We have our own cybersecurity insurance as well. And so I'll give you the answer that I give almost anyone that brings this up, which is I feel confident, or I wouldn't recommend the system. I don't have a crystal ball, and I can't tell you that something may not happen in a year, 2 years, 3 years, God forbid. But should that happen, we will use every resource available and our expertise to respond appropriately. But I have confidence in the vendor for sure.
Good enough. Thank you.
Marshall, you good? Ralph?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say, the exposure that we've seen tonight, I think this definitely, if you look at the three economies in Missouri, St. Louis, Kansas City, and Branson, I mean, we're the three biggest economies that are happening. And this really elevates our presence in the state. To be able to have this kind of tracking, this transparency for our residents to understand. And what Chad talks about, the replacement of one quote-unquote entry-level employee, but I kind of see this as once the onboarding has happened and we're 2-3 years down the road, the efficiency that it creates within the departments is just going to be astronomical. And I kind of explained to Ben, and it's like now Tom Brady can throw touchdowns and he's not over making Gatorade anymore. And I just think that that's so important because that allows us to just give so much attention to quit laughing down there.
You a
Give
Tom
so
Brady
much,
fan?
I'm not a Tom Brady fan. I just think
Peyton
it's a great
Manning,
analogy.
please.
But it just gives our directors the freedom to be more creative in what matters, infrastructure, what matters, quality of life, what matters, public safety, all of those things. And they're spending less time doing this
Oh, for sure.
and more time doing the things that matter to the residents of the community. So I think this is a wonderful investment, and Chad's confidence in it and is just, I think, right on point. So,
Kathy, anything to add?
No, sir, said my comments already.
do you like my analogy though?
I love the analogy, but I was going to ask you to use Aaron Rodgers.
Oh God, everybody's got
But I
an
won't. I won't do that.
She must be a New York Jets fan. so.
Yeah, I know. Nice one. Nice one.
So, if I may, one more very quick thought.
Yeah.
You brought up police just for a moment there, and I skipped them in the second or third slide, whatever that was, strategically, because that's the one area that we'll be coming back to you with a different solution. Again, we want the best solution for every single department, and that's a solution that, is Chief Schmidt in here? He's not in here.
Not
That's a
chasing bad guys.
yeah. So that's one that they're working on an RFP now. It's in the beginning stages. He's going to give me a hard time because I went long because I called him out at the retreat yesterday. So, but that'll be coming to you. So I don't want you to be surprised in a few
Thank you.
months when we bring another agreement to you.
Thank you.
There's a reason for that. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. And if I can just, we've been involved in all of this, and what we're getting with this system is fantastic. And he nailed it on the head as far as the other companies, the bids, all that. We've gone through it. We are so excited to be, quite honestly, moving out of the Stone Age and moving forward and actually able to get things done. And this company is going to help us streamline a lot of stuff, so we're excited.
But the police department will be on a separate standalone, something for you
For
guys.
CAD RMS.
For the CAT RMS?
For their computer-aided dispatching and records management system. So their financials, their timekeeping, their,
Okay.
all that.
That'll be a separate
They'll be just
program.
like every other
So
department.
you're just giving a heads up that we don't say, hey, how come we weren't told about this when you told us of
Exactly.
this?
That's correct.
Got
That's
it.
correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
And when we're finished, I got to run back up there to get ready for the vote, so just heads up.
We'll be done voting before you even get up there.
I hope so, you just won't see it up here.
That's okay. So we're ready to vote? Let's vote. Do we have a motion
Yes, sir, you had a motion second on the floor.
in a second? Hillary, you said we do have a motion in a second?
Yes, you are
Oh,
correct.
then let's vote.
They are voting. Alderman Denham is not registering. What is your vote? Yes. Okay, got it. The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries.
Chad, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 6289, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of cellular services and products from Verizon Wireless and authorizing the mayor to execute the documents related thereto. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6289.
It's been defeated.
No, I'm sorry, it was a misclick. I apologize.
So what's the next item?
Second.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Chad.
Sorry, I actually forgot I had another item. And that microphone's not working real well. So, Mayor, members of the board, the agreement before you this evening, this item is for Verizon Wireless. It's our annual contract that we have with Verizon, who's our carrier for our mobile phones, our tablets, our MDTs, and our police and fire vehicles, things like that. It is a cooperative purchasing contract that has been for a number of years via the federal GSA contract. The pricing of each line can vary depending on line type, features, and overage charges, things like that. It's a 12-year agreement. I'm sorry, a 12-month agreement, correction.
Wow.
However, it's been a long night. However, it can be canceled at any time. The agreement allows the city to have up to 230 lines with an estimated annual cost of $113,400. If our future needs would exceed these numbers, we'd bring it back to you for review and approval. Funds are in the 2023 budget appropriations, and staff recommends approval of the bill.
Safe to say you've shopped this, priced it, chopped it up?
So yeah, we always look at the market, right, to make sure. Now, if we were to switch from Verizon to, Sprint or now T-Mobile or something, that's a major, major undertaking. And I've met with those carriers over the years many times, and honestly, they can't, at this time, compete. I will say T-Mobile's network is leaps and bounds, has really grown in performance in other areas, so that they interest me, but it's not yet there where it makes financial sense for us to make that jump.
Fair enough. Questions from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote. Thank you, Chad.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Your Honor, this is a first reading of Bill Number 6290, an ordinance approving the subaward agreement with Missouri Department of Public Safety for Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Project and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6290.
We have a motion. In a second, we'll get a staff report from Chief.
Mayor and Board of Aldermen, thank you very much. This is reference our unmanned aerial vehicle proposal, the drone project we've been working on for years now. Doesn't just help the police department. We envision this helping fire department and all the other departments as well. We're looking at upgrading from the hobby drone that we have right now to a larger, more commercialized one that we can do, stay up longer, map, do things along those lines for the city, and will assist us with parades and so forth. We put in for an ARPA Peace Officers Grant in '22, and we were awarded funds of $20,000 to assist us with that. The overall project's $65,000, so with that grant, it would leave the city out of the Public Safety Fund with $45,000, which we did budget for this year, anticipating success on that grant. We do urge the board to approve it. And due to the length of time, the ARPA grant response came back a couple months later than we expected. Our quotes are coming up on being expired. And so we're going to ask for a double read so that I don't get stuck behind Chad again and we can get this ordered before the prices go up.
Well, before you ask for a second read, let's see how the first one goes. Any questions, comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board?
Chief, my vote's definitely contingent on me getting to fly this thing. So I don't know, we got to work out on that, but I'd like to take it for a spin.
Okay.
You want to take it for a ride or you want to steer it?
I don't know if it's for my weight, but I might have to shed a few pounds.
It must be.
We do train observers, and that can help us because they have to be spotters for us. So there you go.
Start there.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries.
Your Honor, I move to read Bill Number 6290 for its final reading due to time restraints.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to discuss this? Any members of the board? What we're voting on is to have a second read. So let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Give me 1 second, we'll do the final reading here.
So, Madam Clerk,
Yes, just
would you please
moment.
provide introduction to this item? When you're ready.
Your Honor, this is a final reading of Bill Number 6290, an ordinance approving the sub-award agreement with Missouri Department of Public Safety for Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Project and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for motion to approve the final reading of Bill Number 6290.
We have a motion. And a second. Any questions, comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 6291, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a First Amendment to ground lease agreement with Ballparks of America, LLC. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6291.
Second.
We have a first and second. We'll get a staff report from Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the board, glad to be back in a
been a
different.
while.
What's that?
It's been a while.
It's been a minute, yeah. So now I'm back in a different capacity, a capacity I'm excited about. Although this
tell.
one's not super interesting for most people, but for me it was kind of interesting. And they did a lot of work over the last few months to get this. So what we're going to talk about today is Ballparks of America. So hopefully most people here are familiar with it in the same style I've always presented. I try to present a map to you. If you look at the lot lines that are on this, we are adjusting some stuff out to take it back the street that's in there. So basically what we're doing is we're combining 4 bills together, or I'm presenting on 4 bills together because that's how much it takes to get to the end of that. So Bill number 6291 is a ground lease agreement. The city and the Ballparks of America entered into a ground lease agreement located at the intersection of West 76 and Pat Nash Drive, together with the building's improvements. The city and Ballparks of America, LLC, have entered into a real estate purchase agreement dated October 26, which states that the amendment to the lease must be delivered at the closing of the real estate. The item before you, so this would be 6291, it is to modify the definition of property in the lease to remove the lease of the property known as Pat Nash Drive as described in the legal description. Section P was also cleaned up a little bit of the lease, is hereby amended to remove the requirement that Ballparks of America maintain the median. And we'll get to that here in a second, what that does for us. So staff's going to recommend the first one on 6291, and we'll just read through each one and let you go. 6292 is the road easement. The proposed road easement agreement is for Ballparks of America, LLC, to grant the city a road easement agreement. So the easement lets us pick up a piece of property from them, which will be our roadway. 6293, the city and Ballparks of America, LLC, desire to amend the agreement to update and replace the prior legal description. So we had it replatted back out, and all the chords and bearings, which is the multiple pages that aren't very fun to read except for nerdy people like myself and Keith. So I'll accept that. And then the very last one is basically the instrument that we were after the whole time. So property and boundary survey had been conducted, laying out the revised legal description and providing an adjusted right-of-way for public street right-of-way. The prior agenda items authorized as a public street right-of-way, and we're happy to take care of it going this point forward, and this helps you close up the agreement that you have for real estate on that property.
So, Michael, I'm going to repeat what you just said. But in a way that people can understand. in the ground lease that the city had with Ballparks. Included in that was intended to be a city street called Pat Nash Drive. We discovered in our lease agreement with Ballparks that there was not a dedicated Pat Nash Drive. So we're going to address the ground lease. The Ballparks is going to give us an easement across the land we have leased with them. We're going to amend the purchase contract to address the road that will be there now. And then we're going to dedicate it as a street.
That's right.
That's well done.
Simple? Madam Clerk, we need to read these individually?
Yes, please.
What happened to the speed of business?
Well,
Kathy?
Michael's not going to give a staff report for him, so we're going to just whip through them really quick.
Okay.
That is the speed of business, 4 for the price of 1. There you go.
Okay, so any questions from the audience? Questions from the board? We're voting on 6291. Let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 6292, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a road easement agreement between the City of Branson and Ballparks of America, LLC, pertaining to Pat Nash Drive. The floor is open for motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6292.
We have a motion and a second. Did you get the second?
Oh, got it. Yes, thank
We
you.
have a motion and a second. No further discussion needed. Board ready to vote? Let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 6293, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to approve the First Amendment to Real Estate Purchase Agreement with Ballparks of America, LLC. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6293.
We have a motion. Second. Second. Michael, did you want to add anything? No, we're good?
I think it'd be fun to have you read the legal description
Oh.
to make sure we're being accurate.
Oh, yes.
in what
Look
we're
at him
doing.
light
The
up.
bearings and the angles and the chord
Look at him
lengths, it's
light
so much
up.
fun. Like, the whole family sat through these multiple hours
Did
with
you,
us, and
did you see
they're
the
here,
legal?
so.
Yeah.
On our, yeah,
Yeah, no, I was.
Who's Pat Nash? That's my question.
yeah. Any questions on the board? Let's vote.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries.
Don't get excited, we have one more.
Your Honor, this is the first
We could
reading
turn
of
it any minute.
Bill Number 6294, an ordinance dedicating Pat Nash Drive as public street right-of-way. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6294.
We have a motion. Second. And a second. Michael, you're good? Any questions?
We have another street to take care of. So there it is.
Any questions from the audience? Questions from the board?
Just happy to see your face up there again.
All smiles for you. See, now I'm going to get in trouble tomorrow when we have a round.
We're in the middle of a vote. This is no time for conversation. Let's vote.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you very much.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries.
We're at the reports section of our meeting. Alderman Fenton, you're teeing off.
All right, I had a couple of things. So a couple weeks ago, I mentioned the Jung family, asking everybody just continue to keep them in your thoughts and prayers, as many people have probably seen, or if you haven't, their little boy passed away this past Friday, and so just continue to pray for them and think about them. This is a incredibly difficult time, and so I know they would appreciate that. And then along those same lines is more sad news. Our community lost, I think many people knew Matt Trokey, knew him, whether it was as an attorney or just in other capacities. And for me, Matt was just kind of a just a well-respected guy within our profession, very well thought of, just a just a genuinely good guy. And so, yeah, we lost him last week as well. And so just keep the Trokey family and the Jung family in your thoughts and prayers. I thought about this after the fact, and after Cherry made her comments. You know, one of the things that doesn't come out in a records request is the amount of hours that we all spend doing this, whether it's committee meetings, board meetings, study sessions, special meetings. I mean, it's countless hours. I've got 2 young kids, I've got a business, and I dedicate a significant amount of time to this because I love this city and I like doing this. So, I wish Ms. Webster would just talk to me and ask me, or address it with me instead of in a public forum. That's not really. I don't know. It's frustrating because that records request doesn't reflect just the time and hours and dedication that it takes to do. And that goes for us, and that goes for, I see Mr. DeJager out here. You serve on P&Z. I mean, you have lots of people in our community and staff, people that dedicate a tremendous amount of time to this. And I think they do it out of a love for our community and to do the right thing. So while it may not have shown up on a records request of I'm meeting with the administrator every week or however often Jerry wants me to, I did have that meeting. I do have that ongoing meeting scheduled, and quite frankly, I thought it was a great meeting. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to have done that. And I know this is crazy, but I do have a job and things I have to take care of outside of this, and so I was late to the study session today. Again, sometimes there's things in life. So that's kind of my only comment on that. I don't want to be confrontational. I'm not trying to be ugly. I guess I would just ask that be taken into account. I think that's for anybody. I think everybody up here dedicates a tremendous amount of time, volunteer time, to do this, and I just would ask that be respected. On a positive note, so it's all been negative so far, on a really positive note, so Chad mentioned earlier I ran into him in St. Louis, which was completely random, of all places to see somebody from Branson. I look over and I'm like, wait, that's Chad, and we're at this random museum in St. Louis on a Saturday, which was probably like the busiest day this place had ever had. I mean, we were packed in there like sardines, you couldn't move. But the reason I was in St. Louis, my daughter, so I'm gonna give her just a real quick shout out, my youngest daughter competed in the state gymnastics tournament on Sunday, and she took first overall for her age group. So I just want to say congratulations to her, and on a high note as a proud dad. So that's all I got. Thanks.
I attended 2 events. Last Thursday on the 23rd of March, I don't know if anybody's been out there, but the Shrine of the Holy Spirit in front of the Mansion Theater is absolutely beautiful. There was prayer all day, different people representing, and Pam Snowden held a 2-hour time frame to pray for this community and specifically Branson. So I went there on behalf of that. Friday night, attended the Moms for America event, and I won't go into it too much because there's others on this board. It was one of the most amazing events I've ever attended, and if you're looking to participate with Moms for America, what they do for this community, what they do for our next generation is absolutely amazing. The last thing I wanted to say is, and I think I've heard it like for 1.5 years now, that this city is so difficult to work with, the planning department's horrible, nobody knows what they're doing, and I think that was in the past. It probably was. But over the last 1.5 years, I think we have a lot to be grateful for. I've heard so many good things regarding Michael Woods did take that planning department and the team that was there, and he has made it one of the best departments that planning has been for a long time. Kendall Powell was promoted. He is doing an amazing job. We have a new planning director. Also, some other comments that were made was that nobody's developing here. There's no planning and zoning commission meetings, therefore the city is flat. Nothing's happening here, and they're just because they're horrible to deal with. However, I wanted to say that there are larger projects that have only required a building permit for review, an administrative process with staff-only approvals. Planning Commission and Board of Aldermen approvals are not required. We have 27 projects right now that are either under construction, soon to be, or recently completed. That is huge. Earlier, it was stated that it was 80 million plus for the year 2021 for development in the city. 2022, 88 plus million. Okay, so January through March, which is our slowest time of the year, we've already achieved over 30 million. So I think that that is some great news for this area, and it's for the leadership that's taking place in this city now. I just want to thank everybody, all the directors, Kathy's staff. You guys are doing an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Clay. Good. Chuck.
On another sad note, I was a pallbearer over the week for a beautiful young lady that took her own life, Rachel Reitzel. She's a mother of 3. She would bend over backwards for anybody, but she was fighting some depression. I encourage everybody out there. I mean, this is probably the 6th time I've been a pallbearer in a suicide ever since I was an adult. I went through 3 of them in the military. Please reach out to your friends, your families, your neighbors. Be the ministry for them. If you are going through depression, reach out. There's people that care about you more than you know. Just look out for each other. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Marshall.
Yeah, a couple thank yous. I don't always do thank yous, and I apologize about that. But thank you so much to the Petersons. That was incredible. Thank you to Chad. You know, I didn't realize that in his big day that he was doing all this, I made him figure out an audio for a band, right, too. But he stepped up. Thank you to Kathy, who made me realize that we can have sometimes songs at City Council, and I think you should do that in Branson. You know, I've just it's been the pleasure of my life to serve not only on this board, but as the mayor's ambassador to the shows. So many projects, including the one I did today. Thanks to Rick for helping me this morning. We got the Jim Stafford sign moved to its final resting place. So our museum's coming along, and just so grateful to everyone who helps make this community what it is and keeps the music going. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I'm going to start out with a thank you. Thank you, Marshall, for inviting me and my wife to the Moms of America. That I'll kind of, wow, what a moving event. You know, several of the residents of the community were honored, and the Hershin family was honored. Yakov Smirnoff was honored, which I got to tell you, what a guy that loves America. Holy smokes. This guy's from the Soviet Union, and he loves this country with every cell of his being. Like, you almost feel American standing next to him. Like, that's how much he loves this country. So that was just amazing to see. And he got up there, and, you know, he just kind of expressed why he loved it so much, and you really felt it. And then Kirk Cameron was just amazing with all that he does and what he represents. And, you know, being from Hollywood, that was kind of a little bit shocking, but it was definitely refreshing. And, you know, just overall, that was a great event. And it just kind of leads me into, like, how this week has been for me, and visiting my family in Louisiana. And I just say kindness, like kind candor. Like, what is that? Like, it's just being kind. Like opening a door, saying thank you, saying hello. You know, we're in a definite, this next week's going to be pretty interesting, I'm sure. And just remember that, as Cody mentioned, and so did Chuck, that life is very fragile. We're not promised tomorrow. None of us are. So why not be kind? Why not? You know, if anything we learned over the last couple of years, and I've said this even when I was running, is that our time here on earth is so precious. Why can't we leave it better because we were here? And I think kindness will lead us that way. So to your neighbors, to the person you run into at the grocery store that you might not know. Give them a smile, if anything, because I'll tell you, and I've seen this happen and I've witnessed it firsthand, is that your smile can be the very thing that stops that one person from taking their life. Because they will set out the day and say, if one person smiles at me, I have a reason to live. So please, I ask you, just smile at someone tomorrow. Thank you.
Wow, follow that one, Kathy.
Well, I think I'll just start, I had a few like business type points here, but I do want to share one, since we're talking some spiritual stuff here, which is so fun to get to be in a community where you actually have the freedom to speak about your faith. Where I come from, that ain't happening. So it's just such a blessing to get to be here. But I will tell you, I had a remarkable experience this last week where two random ladies from the community whom I had not met before and didn't know from Adam just stopped in to my office out of the blue just to say they're praying for me. And it just would happen to come at a moment where I was like feeling kind of low, you know, those times. And I'm like, no, I got to just stay positive and keep charging forward. And sometimes that's very taxing, and it's very difficult in positions like these, especially in political times. But I just want to thank, because these ladies shared with me, oh no, we have a prayer group, and we're praying for you all the time. And they don't know me. And it just lifted my spirits, and honestly, it's moments like that that keep me getting out of bed and keep me coming in here to lead the talent and the dedicated team that I'm so privileged to get to be the lead singer for, I keep saying, because it's Branson, but it's a blessing for me to get to be here, and I'm so thankful to all of you who have me in your prayers. Goodness Lord, I would never be able to stop and just really express how appreciative I am. And so is my husband, so thank you for that.
Paul, right?
That's my Paul.
Paul. Okay.
Yes, my Paul. Couple of business things. Joe Lauber is joining us here tonight, as you saw from the Lauber Municipal Group. Some of you may already have known Joe from several years back. He's done a lot of TIF and SID work, and he was probably chomping at the bit to get in there, but I would have killed him because I'm like, Ben's already going long enough. Hello. So, but thankfully he had a lot of self-restraint. Joe, could you just give us like literally a 30-second snapshot, and I mean 30 seconds, of like your illustrious career in 30 seconds so that everybody knows who you are? You'd be kind enough. Are you getting tech? Otherwise, I can keep going if you want.
Test 1, 2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. We're very happy to be representing the city of Branson and happy to be serving as interim city administrator. Just very quickly.
Wait a minute.
Was that 30 seconds?
I don't think
Excuse
that
me.
happened.
Did I say city administrator?
Yeah, it was so
I gave myself a
awkward.
raise, didn't I? City attorney of the city of Branson. We have
Right.
we have two offices, one in Lee Summit, one in Jefferson City. We have 13 attorneys who do nothing but municipal law. So you will not only see me, but you may see some additional attorneys who are extremely talented. I'm very blessed to have an amazing team. We are working towards opening an office in Southwest Missouri, and that's something I'll be working on as well as we go. But we appreciate this opportunity to be here and look forward to serving you and helping keep things moving, as Mayor already had told me today, at the speed of business, not at the speed of government.
Thank you, Joe. Couple of other things. I feel like I need to keep repeating this for the public to try and combat some of the stuff that's out there. But we are fully staffed at our director level. We introduced you to Haley Hutchins from HR and Mark Calusi from Planning and Development. Both of them started within the last week, and you've seen how Michael's moved into Public Works now. He's full-time there, has hit the ground running, putting some great systems into place. It's going to help us track and triage and be more accountable to our citizens on where Public Works impacts them the most. We had a fantastic director's retreat yesterday, and I'm just going to share something like very self-deprecating here, which is everyone thought it would be so fun if they had these Kathy bingo cards, okay? See how they're all laughing at my expense? And so I wish everybody at home could see this part. But anyway, they've got, apparently, I have these weird, quirky colloquialisms that I brought with me from Wisconsin. And everybody thought it would be hilarious to put bingo cards together whenever Kathy says one of her ridiculous northern sayings, like make hay when the sun shines. Doesn't everybody know that one down here? Yeah, I'm seeing some nods in the audience and the like. But anyway, okay, Minnesota. Too funny. But it was really a good fun, and one person did end up getting a bingo, as I recall, so apparently I use these regularly. But the reason I share that with you is just to express to you the relationship level that we're on with each other, that we can joke around and kid each other, and they can tease me super hard, and I still have a smile on my face during the whole thing. But not only was it fun and lots of team building, but just being able to watch the body language, feel the energy in the room, to watch the free exchange of ideas and solutions for each person to offer to be a resource of comfort, of advice, whatever it is that they need. That's the kind of team that's going to move this city forward, and that's who we've got in these places, and it's something everybody in Branson should be very, very proud of. The other thing I want to let you know, I've had lots of meetings with Chamber folks lately. The annual member luncheon, the March Board of Directors meeting, and the one before that. And I told you I'm going to be working with the Chamber to help me get more acquainted with the leadership at the Chamber, working with, Jonas. It's late. And he's been super helpful to me, and I'm very thankful to him, and very thankful again to Rachel for her work on the marketing plan as well. Also, contrary to past comments, I'm having regular meetings with City Administrator from Hollister, Rick Ziegenfuss, affectionately known as Z, whenever he texts you, in case you haven't noticed that. And I've got continuing standing meetings with him. He's also invited me to be his guest at the April Hollister Chamber Luncheon, which is just delightful. Partners in Progress is another thing that I attend regularly with Hollister too. Quick updates, Fire Station 4, bid documents for the realistically redesigned Fire Station 4 went out on March 20th. We're really hopeful to break ground in early summer. So this is moving. And I'm very thankful to our entire team for keeping that on track. The RFQ's been sent out for Hiawatha Heights designs, and that's due back to us by April 5th. I know that's a project near and dear to everybody's hearts. We've got the grand reopening of the Recplex with the new gym floor and associated remodeling that we had to do from the flooding. That's going to be April 3rd at 10:30 a.m. at the Recplex. The community is invited to come to the ribbon cutting. Cindy's put so much energy into this, and honestly, if it hadn't been for her and Bob Smither, we wouldn't be open for another 6 months. If we were waiting on insurance companies from where, it would be taking even longer. And they have moved mountains for us and for the community, and to keep our programs on track and keep our youth coming in. It's been fantastic. So please join us on April 3rd at 10:30. The chief's positive momentum in the police department is paying many dividends. We're receiving additional lateral transfer applications, 2 of them with supervisory experience from other agencies. This is a big deal. So it's not just trainees or people that we have to pay to put through the academy. These are people who have already got law enforcement experience on the ground and supervisory experience as well. So there's not a lot of training to do. It's just getting them integrated into our culture and organization. Hats off to the chief, and literally hats, because you've seen the cowboy hats, which are super fly. And and the best is yet to come with those guys. So I love to see.
Was that on that bingo card?
Yeah, actually, Superfly was on there. Gosh darn it. Oh. Last thing I want to just share with you is applications open March 31st for all of our city board and committee positions. We've got vacancies on various boards, and Hillary's going to help me put out a list of which openings we've got coming up. And again, to the community and to all you folks who come to every one of our meetings, we would love to see you on some of our committees and commissions, because that's where the real dense conversation can take place, and you can really have an impact on policy and where the city's going. I know, Rick, you're already wrapped up in one already, so thank you for your service on planning as well. And I think I've remembered to, and I just want to publicly thank Alex Gerard for his work on the retreat, because, I get so bananas, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to thank Alex. So he put the whole thing, bananas is on the card. Yeah, and, but Alex did an outstanding job. And again, the synergy, we're going to do these quarterly, because It's just, we've got to keep having that regular FaceTime and interaction. We do weekly meetings, but it's not like getting off site and really having that powwow time to build ideas and excitement. So this is the best time for Branson. Honestly, we are just at a pivotal moment here where we can just continue to take things roaring forward and bring the community right along with us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Wow. Actually, I think on the last couple of meetings, you didn't have reports, so you put 3 in 1.
I did. Thank you for your indulgence.
I don't really have much to report. Since our last meeting, I welcomed 14,000 quilters at the convention center. Last year, they had an attendance of 10,000. This year was 14,000, and Sam Boyson and the head person from the quilt organization, she was saying that she's going to need more space. I told her we were in alignment because we just went out for a feasibility study about expanding our convention. I welcomed the Bombs for America. Why are you laughing? I mispronounced it when I was greeting this group, right? I'm greeting them. Lots of passion. On 3 occasions that I was referencing the organization, I proudly said, Women for America. Oh well.
It was passionate.
There was a lot of passion. I'm very, very excited on the trends we're going, the directors that I visit with. I've already had a meeting with our new attorney, and that's going very well. I have granddaughters that are awaiting Papa, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it.
It's like, we're